Hey, everybody, it's Jacob Newton here, professional hockey player and mental health coach, advocate, all of the above. My good buddies over at SportsEpreneur and I did a podcast together about a year ago, and ever since then, we've been keeping in touch, creating content podcasts now. So if anybody out there is interested in doing the same, having their own podcast or want some type of content creation, don't hesitate to reach out to those guys at SportsEpreneur. They are willing and able to help you out. And after listening, don't hesitate in leaving a review, and then you'll get much more access to all of my content across the SportsEpreneur platform. I'm going to turn it right over to my good buddy, let him introduce himself and just say a little bit about himself and where he's at in his life. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jake, thanks for having me on, man. My name's Russ Sinkewich. I'm a former pro hockey player, former college, former pro hockey player, and now a current skill provider for the Northeast Ohio region. It's really, I'm the founder and the head coach of an organization called the Ohio Hockey Project, which for me was my transition out of the sport that I love so much. And truthfully, it probably took me away a few years earlier than it needed to, but I couldn't have found a better segue into the next chapter of my life and really taking my skills and my passion for the sport and bringing it to my community in Northeast Ohio and Cleveland specifically, where, like any former athlete, they love the sport and they love everything about the sport. Now I literally eat, sleep, and breathe it, but I get to pass it on to the next generation, which it's funny because I look at my career and I got to do some cool things and some great things in the sport. And I played at a high level and a respectable level, but I'm more proud of my accomplishments as a former player than I am of winning championships and signing a pro contract or getting a college scholarship or these really, really incredible personal accolades that I get to pay it forward to Cleveland hockey, which is really what fuels me now. So we can get into that in a little bit, but yeah, Russ Sinkewich, and thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, absolutely, buddy. Obviously, thank you so much for joining. I know it's a crazy time in the world. We got nothing but time. So, again, thank you so much. And one thing I wanted to ask you is because I know for myself that my two oldest brothers, they're both, or one's currently coaching, one was a coach. And it was about 14 years ago, we decided to set up our own camp. We called it Newton Hockey. We had shirts made and all of the track suits and all this stuff. And we did it just one time. And it was such a crazy good success. We did it in, a town I kind of grew up in Riverside, California. But I think right now, being at the end of my career, thinking about, okay, what's next? I've had so many buddies call me, hey, let's set up this camp and let's go to this market and this market. But it never kind of transpires. It never actually takes place. But for yourself, you've been able to take those steps in setting up your own camp and all these clinics. And obviously we've done work together in terms of skating in the past, the last few summers. But what was it like for you to kind of actually take that step? Obviously you said you were still playing, and it kind of took you away from playing. Maybe you had such a good level of success. So maybe for, guys that are listening that are maybe at the end of their career, they want to set up a camp. What was that kind of transition like for you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously like anything you start, you're taking a lot of kind of leaps of faith along the way. I think for me, I just felt this internal drive of, it just felt like the right thing to do. And even still, this is the 11th summer doing it. Like, I have yet to ever make a decision out of like a financial gain from it. Like, if things go well and they're financially successful, that's wonderful, but that's never, and it still has never been at the forefront of my decision making. It's how does this help the community? How does this help this specific demographic? And for me, it was always having my core values really, really clearly defined and never straying from them. And I still, there's a lot of little things I could be doing differently that would probably be, more quote unquote successful for us, but I won't go down those roads because they just don't align with my core values and why I started doing this. So for any players, and it's funny because I have this conversation with former, NFL guys and an NBA guy I talked to a little bit, that they're always thinking about doing things. And it's like, as long as you really define, again, your core values, your wants out of it, your mission out of it, I think that's always the key to being successful. And I think when people do get into these kind of endeavors, you realize like it's so gratifying to help other people, and especially anybody that ever got to take their craft to a professional level. You didn't get there by accident. And it's like, you've probably forgotten more than most people will ever learn about their sport, right? So it's like, to take a simple little thing, like maybe it was like, you know, as a former hockey player, a lot of us know like what a black ace skate is, right? Like I did more than I can count. And I think about like a silly little drill in a black ace skate, like what a developmental skill and drill for a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old. And it's stuff that you think about without really even thinking about like how helpful that is. So you start tying together curriculum after season, and you're like, wow, like I'm making a difference. And then really the tangible difference when you start to see kids just, they make better teams or they win more games or they're just a better hockey player. And,
right.
you know, at least with our project, we took it to the next level with the on-ice stuff is obviously a huge part of it because that's one of our goals is to make you just a better hockey player. But I took in what hockey gave me, which is probably why I'm a good guest for you, but hockey gave me such a good mental edge to how I approach life. It taught me so many life lessons, as does every sport for any athlete. But, you know, on the ice is one thing with our kids, but we spend, and I like to almost focus more time off the ice with teaching core values, teaching attitude, work ethic, teaching perseverance, teaching mental grit. I love that word, but that's something that, you know, at least in my career, if anyone looks me up, you know, I was never a superstar. I never played on great teams. I wasn't a draft pick. I didn't do anything really exceptionally well, but mentally I was probably stronger than 99.9% of the people I played against. And I think that teaching that in kids is like, how do you take an average player and have them have really exceptional accomplishments? And that was the body of work in my career. So that's kind of my take on it anyways, but yeah.
Nice, man. I think I'm going to go back to kind of like the beginning of what you were saying here in terms of, you know, having the success that you've been able to have with the Ohio Hockey Project. And I think, again, in terms of the conversations I've had with buddies about setting up our own camps, I think the thing that's always at the forefront of their thoughts in terms of setting up these camps is money. So I think through that, you're going to run into a lot of complications that maybe you didn't foresee coming. But it sounds like with you, this has been such a big passion of yours to help the next generation, to put your best foot forward and trying to help these players to, you know, rise up and get to the highest levels that they possibly can. But it's a passion. So you're chasing your passion. So like you said, the money and all that, it's great if you're able to make, you know, so much money per month doing it, you know, during the summers or whatever. But again, that's not your main focus. Your main focus is giving to the next person. You know, it sounded like a lot like you're receiving a lot through your giving. And that's so powerful. I think about myself in terms of, you know, the mental health work I do, the messages I get from people. Like I'm, you know, putting out content and doing all this stuff unconditionally. I don't expect anything in return, but you do get messages, or I do get messages from people. And that right there is like the most rewarding thing. It's not like they're sending me money. They're just giving me a message, letting me know how much they appreciate it, you know? So I would imagine you're probably getting a lot of the, you know, same things. Kids coming up to you, just a simple thank you sometimes can create so much energy within ourselves, you know? So yeah.
I honestly can't even like, it's funny. I talk about that all the time. I can't even quantify that to people, like what that worth to me is when I get the emails, or especially like now it's kind of like the tryout season and kids are making teams that they didn't think they would have made. And parents are giving me these messages of gratitude. And it's the same thing on social media. We get a lot of it, or kids will text me, and it's amazing. You can't put a dollar on that. It's so hard to explain until you accept and receive those messages where you're like, you want to talk about like lighting the fire, like, you know, and that's what it's really all about for anybody that's passionate about what they do.
Right.
You know, and I think if people that are getting into any type of this part of the industry, like, you know, if you want it to be profitable, you scale it and you try to do it big and you do it in a lot of cities, and that's great. But that wasn't our goal. You know, our goal was to be amazing in our city, and that's it. Like, we're not leaving the region. We're not doing all these other things. Like, we're making Cleveland hockey as good as we possibly can. And the cool thing is because of it, there's so much more growth in the community. More kids are playing the sport, and more people are doing kind of what I'm doing, which is great with the hockey project, because that's really what the mission is all about. But yeah, it's a powerful feeling for sure when you get, like, again, those messages of gratitude.
Yeah, for sure. And
any coach going.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So again, you know, I'm also, again, thinking about this being the end of my career and, you know, kind of the next steps. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes the game is taken from players, guys I've played with, maybe their career ended due to injury, or it was just kind of that time they weren't making the money they wanted or something like that. So it sounds like, maybe even you didn't want to, move on to this chapter kind of when you did, but you were fortunate enough to have this other thing on the side that you've been doing that you were passionate about, that was, you were kind of maybe able to ease into that transition. I think, unfortunately, so many guys, like I said, are retiring from the game at the professional level when they're not ready. So they don't have that next thing lined up. How would you say that having this already kind of eased that transition for you, and maybe was able to help you to be at peace with being done playing almost maybe instantly? Or was that the case for you?
Yeah, well, it was, for me, it was twofold. It was, the more powerful message for me was, I was playing in the American League, and I did it for 8 years. And for me, it was, I loved doing what I did in the summers more than playing hockey, which was like, that's a really crazy statement, that whenever I hear myself say that, it's such a positive reminder for my own like mental well-being, that like I transitioned at the right time for me, because I was in the prime of my physical conditioning and my shape, and I was playing. Statistically, I had my absolute best season of my entire life the year I walked away by choice, no injury or anything, but it was because I was so driven by my next, like the ambition of my next chapter of like, oh my God, like look what we did in this short amount of time, and I'm only home for 3 months doing it. What if I'm home for 12 months doing it? And that was that. And then the other part for me was right, wrong, or indifferent. And I think a lot of people get in this lane in the sport, but I felt like I had achieved all I really could. I won an ECHL Kelly Cup. I played on a team that won a Calder Cup. And I just felt like statistically, it didn't really matter what I did. I was kind of just, I was where I was. I was always on an American League contract, and I would do well. And then every year it was just Groundhog Day. I would just restart where I was. And for me, it was like, well, I'm falling out of love with the business part of this, and I'm more in love with the sport and training and my teammates, and obviously playing the game itself. It's for anyone that's never played a game at that level, to skate out of a tunnel in front of X amount of fans. It's I say the word bulletproof to kids, because I literally felt like I was Superman. Every player knows that feeling, right? So that was really, really hard to walk away. I still get choked up thinking about it, but you know what? I get that times 10 on what I do now with the Hockey Project, and that's amazing. It's a really special thing. So yeah, so I guess for me it was an easy transition, but it's yeah, you definitely got to have a plan, and it's never a successful endeavor when you just jump at something without a plan. And for me, it was really calculated, because I'd been doing this for years. I mean, I was doing this when I was in college, obviously at a much smaller scale, and it was kind of like aimless, just to say the least. I was just doing it out of passion. But any decision, it doesn't matter if it's buying groceries. If you just show up and buy stuff, you're probably not going to have the best dinner that week. Same thing with, buying a vehicle or a home, or proposing to your best friend. You know what I mean? Like, you got to have a plan, right?
Right. Absolutely. So I think kind of like the message here that I want to put out there is that for any, guys that are coming towards the end of their career, it doesn't even have to be at the professional level. If it's college, you're playing your senior year, and this is going to be it, or your juniors, like, in terms of what's next, I think it's best that, again, we have a plan. We're prepared that, our lifestyle, and I want to talk on that too, the lifestyle that we had playing professionally, like our days are done at lunch. We show up to the rink at 8 or 7:30, and we were there for 3.5, 4 hours. And then we eat lunch, and then our days are done. It's such a unique lifestyle that not too many people get to experience, and not too many people get paid to experience. So I did it for 10 years, and it's like now I'm thinking about what's next for me, and I've got all these things I'm doing, right? But it's like, I don't want to lose that part. I don't want to have to go and work your normal 9-to-5 job and be in a cube or something like that, right? Where I'm so used to movement, I'm so used to freedom in terms of what I'm able to do after 12 o'clock hits. I've got 9, 10, I go to bed really early. So I've got 9 more hours in my day of again, feeling it to do whatever I want. Some guys go to bed later, they get 12 hours again. So there's so much freedom there. So I think that's, a powerful message too, is to understand that, most likely your lifestyle is going to change drastically. It's not going to just be your label in terms of what it is you do. But it's so much of it's going to change, you know? So anyhow, one thing I wanted to make sure that we talked about on this is obviously you work with a lot of the youth, right? That's primarily the group of guys you're working with in terms of the Ohio Hockey Project. I know that during summer times, once everybody's home, all the pros and the college guys, like we have separate skates, which is great. But in terms of what you do in terms of the Ohio Hockey Project, it's mainly youth. So through that, you're probably having a lot of interactions with parents. And one thing that I know for sure is that unfortunately parents can get in the way of these athletes, of these little teenage kids, right? Trying to show up to the rink and enjoy the game, but they've got mom and dad in their minds and how mad they're going to get. Real quick, I'll tell a story about, you know, my experience when I was playing youth hockey was having my dad come to the games, or I'm fortunate that my dad came, grateful that he came, but sometimes his reactions to how I played were very damaging, I would imagine, to me back then. If I played great, he was right there to let me know. Unbelievable job, patting on the back, good job, so proud of me. But when I played bad, it was one of two things would happen. The car ride home, which for me was always at least an hour and a half. So it would be an hour and a half of screaming or an hour and a half of dead silence. But they were both equally
unhealthy. Yeah, very unhealthy.
Exactly. So again, that's, you know, my dad kind of, in a sense, was kind of maybe getting in the way of my true enjoyment of the game, you know, going into the game, instead of focusing on, you know, making a good pass or skating abilities and the power play and all this. I'm worried about, well, if I don't play so good tonight, my dad, you might be really mad. So I'm more focused on that than I am on my ability to play. So my question to you is, what are some of the things that you've seen in terms of parents and maybe like I said, getting in the way of these kids' development in terms of hockey?
Yeah, well, you know, it's funny. I'm going to address what you said because I actually had a very similar experience with my mother. And it's weird because now as an athlete, former athlete, and then coach, I see it like full circle, honestly. And it's funny because we're expecting our first kid here, and it's like, I can't wait to be like, I tell like a joke to my buddies, like the model parent. Like, I'm going to act exactly how every parent needs to act. But it, you know, so I guess readdressing what you'd said, like, I think that a big reason why people get to a high level is because they have a lot of drive and support from their parents. But I think that in hindsight, there's much healthier ways for parents to do things. Obviously, it's hard because I think in hockey specifically, it's a very expensive sport. For a lot of kids that play at a high level, the sacrifice is unreal with the time. You know, I was living in Cleveland one year. We played on a team that was in like Pennsylvania. So like, same thing. I'm in a car an hour and a half to practice.
Yeah.
Every weekend, you know, especially in Northeast Ohio, if you want competitive hockey, you're driving to Detroit, to Chicago, to Buffalo. Like, that's how it works. So I think that parents oftentimes feel that the commitment that they're making, it almost, and I don't like the word to use this, but it's almost like an entitlement, whether it's my child, I write the checks, I made the sacrifice, I'm going to put in my 2 cents, which is fair. Absolutely, it's fair. But I think it always needs to be done with that child's mental health at the forefront of your delivery.
Right.
And so often I see, like, a quick story. I'll never forget this. There's a child I played with growing up when we were like peewees. His dad would take a quarter and tap it on the glass. He was a goaltender. Stand behind him, tap a quarter on the glass, and flip the quarter over the glass to him, tell him to call and get his own ride home if he had a bad game. And it's like, you hear these stories, and I've lived and seen these stories, and it breaks my heart because it's like, that is so detrimental to a kid's mental health above all. But then at the end of the day, a parent, the thing you want most for your child is to be happy and to play well. So it's like you're actually sabotaging your kid's performance by your ill behavior. So, you know, and it's funny, I wrote a blog about this, but something I think so important is that at the end of the day, like, let the coaches coach. I mean, if you're a former athlete and you know something about the sport, then maybe you can deliver a positive message, but that the key is it's positive. It's a constructive delivery of like, hey, you know, you did this poorly. Next time when you see this scenario, do this differently. Or, you know, and if you don't feel comfortable, if you don't think that's the right approach, well, as soon as you get out of the rink or the arena or the stadium or wherever, don't talk about the sport. talk about school, talk about family, talk about friends outside of that team, or how, whatever's coming up, but I think that that's a really healthy exercise. Because like anything, you need to compartmentalize things. Just even I loved hockey, and I love hockey more than anything. But when I go on vacation, I don't want to think about hockey. I want to think about a beach. Or when I leave the rink as a former player, like I wanted to think about my family or what I had to do that day or whatever. So, I think that parents, they play a vital role in a kid's success or failure. And I think if a parent's delivery is positive and loving and enthusiastic, I think that that's obviously the best foundation. But when it gets to negative town and it starts to finger pointing and cynical, and I don't really know that that's the recipe, and it's a fine line, because I think a parent should be stern. You should be on your kid to be working hard. You should be on your kid to being committed and being focused. And I think that that's a positive delivery. But when you start, attacking a kid's performance, and I laugh because it's the same thing when I see coaches yelling at kids. I talk to the coach after practice, and I go, that kid doesn't know what he doesn't know. Like you're yelling at this kid to do something that he doesn't even understand what you're asking him to do. Like, how would he have known what to do, because you've experienced it through your career and your body of playing? Right. He doesn't know that, or she doesn't know that. So don't yell at them and then skate them and punish them. Yeah. Have a positive, deliver to them. Yeah. And it's like, I just look at, at least in my career, like the best coaches I ever had were the ones that I respected the most, that like pulled me aside and showed me video or really, really educated me. And then of course, if there would be repetitive poor behavior, poor delivery on my part, yes, there should be a lack of ice time, or I should be a healthy scratch, or I should get cut or something. Sure. But you can't do that the first time. And as a kid, that leash needs to be like a mile long, because how does that 12-year-old kid that you're yelling at know any better? Like in your situation, or maybe my situation, that car ride home, like, you don't know, you're going out and you're trying your hardest, Right. But your parents, and the one thing that I always remind parents too is, the game's a lot easier from the stands.
Yes.
It's a lot easier to see the next play from the bird's eye view. It's a lot easier to see what you should have, could have done. When you're in the moment, the game's 100 miles an hour and you're reading and reacting in the blink of an eye. Yeah. And that's where, like, I think a child deserves, a mile of forgiveness. And that's so critical to their long-term development, because like you said, like, it can be detrimental to a kid's passion. Because in any sport, you're trying to be great at it. And that in and of itself is exhausting. And then if you're getting an earful and then you're getting worn down mentally on top of physically, like, you're burning the candle at both ends. And that's impossible to be successful, right, for any kid, Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's, I think unfortunately what's happening, the dynamic between parent and son or daughter in terms of playing, is that it's not like, it's not unconditional. It's conditional. It's, I will continue to support you, playing hockey as long as you're doing this and you're doing that. And so once those kids aren't able to live up to those expectations, then I think you're starting to see it kind of bleed through in terms of how the parents are reacting. Again, like I said, when a game doesn't go so well. So, that dad flipping that quarter over and saying, call and get yourself a taxi, essentially, like, that is so damaging, because then you can also think about, well, what's his life like at home? So he's in hockey as like an escape. And I think about myself and, the things that I went through in my childhood. Hockey was an escape for me. That was kind of my church. It was where I could go and forget about life, and I'm just on the ice and I'm just in the moment. But if, at times my home life wasn't always so great. So now, like you said, it's burning the candle at both ends, essentially. If life at home isn't good, now your parents come into these games and now they're making this a toxic environment as well. Where is the joy in the life for this child? It's nowhere, and if parents aren't aware of this, and I think unfortunately how the approach that parents are taking is very much me versus you instead of us together. So I did a podcast, just a short, like 8-minute long one. And it was a message to parents. And I brought up the example that I shared with you in terms of the car ride home. And most times when we play bad, we know. Most times when we make a mistake, we know. And most times we know what we could have done differently, right? So as a parent, instead of, again, just screaming, your message is gone. All we're hearing is the noise. Let's try and include our son or daughter in the conversation. Hey, like you had mentioned, hey, you know what you could have done here differently? Hey, I saw this mistake. Do you know what you could have done differently? And most times the answer is going to be yes, and they'll tell you what they should have done differently. But now, as a parent, we're involved. It's us together. We're a team. We all want our son and daughter to play better and get to the highest level, as do they. But if you make it, me against you, then it's never going to be successful. And eventually this kid's going to hate showing up to the rink.
Well, and also, too, the delivery where it's like, especially when we're talking about a kid, when you see a parent yelling at him, it's like, to me, that's like, it's such an alarming thing where it's like, where's the like, is today the last day they're ever playing hockey? No, it's not, more times than not. So, like, why are we panicking to deliver this message in such a negative delivery where it's like, talk to them. Yeah. Just talk to them and make it a positive, learning experience. It'd be the same thing like if you're like in second grade doing like a division question in math, you get it wrong and the teacher's like freaking out at you, like what? How we're not learning? We're not learning that way. But it's like, so I see like what's the panic for? Right. Like what's the panic? Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's fascinating, like the role a parent can play and how it could be so positive, because you already see, you hit the nail on the head where it's like the sport, like anybody that ever is successful in any sport and take the most iconic athletes in the world, the Kobes and the Serenas and the Tigers and the Wayne Gretzky's, every single person, they played the sport because they loved it. Mm-hmm. And then the budget superstars like you and I, like we played the game because we loved it. Yeah. So that was our escape, and that was like that was the happiest hour of our day. Still is. Yeah. So it's like, I don't understand when parents like getting away with that. It's like, man, still make it a great experience. And then that experience can actually be enhanced by like some really, really positive pregame talk. Don't get in the way, but like, hey, like, what are your strengths? All right, buddy, have fun. Hey, be a great teammate. Like just simple little things that I'm pretty sure aren't really getting discussed. Yeah. And then afterwards, like the icing on the cake could be like, like you have a bad game, like be the first to pick your child up. Right. Hey, you know what? That's why you're playing 50 of them this year. Or, hey, that's what practice is for on Monday. Right. Or, hey, like just wait till you do get bigger and stronger. You won't, there's 1,001 positive affirmations that can be delivered. What it can make that experience for a kid 10 times better. Right. That I feel like they're just missed opportunities by parents.
Yeah. And I think the saddest part is that I just don't think parents are even aware the impact that they're having on these kids. And they are also not even aware of what they're doing. And I talk a lot about this, about as an individual, parents or non-parent, our relationship with literally everything outside of ourselves, with our spouses, with our wives, our husbands, our friends, the society, our environment, with our job, with everything, is always just going to be a projection of what's going on inside of us. Right. So again, if these parents aren't aware of their own inner stuff, their mental health, their past, that interaction they're having with their child is most likely a very subconscious interaction, and they aren't even truly aware. They might know like, holy shit, I'm screaming right now. Or they might think back, to an hour ago and that interaction they had with their child or the car ride home, but they have no idea of how to stop that from happening. So you talk about the panic. I don't even know if it's so much that, because I think it's just, if these parents have no idea what's going on inside of them, then that interaction is always going to be the same. So is it panic, or is it just having no awareness of what's going on in their own lives? And now they're just projecting. And I think about this, like for parents, most of you have jobs. When you're at your workplace, just imagine if your boss came up and just screamed at you like you do to your child, or gave you the silent treatment just like you do your child. How is that going to make you feel? But we think that just because they're kids, that they can handle it, or they should be able to handle it, or whatever the case is. It's just not true. And again, imagine the same message coming from your boss, but coming in a loving, positive manner. The message is going to get through. You're going to see clearly what it is, your boss wants you to do, and you're going to be able to correct it accordingly, right? But if your boss is coming at you screaming like crazy, you're going to, shrink, and you're not going to hear anything that's going on.
Well, that's the one thing too, is in my experience, I've noticed a lot of parents, and maybe they played the sport, and let's just obviously stick to hockey. Like maybe they played the sport at some level, but majority of the time, they probably didn't play at a higher level than the kids' coaches. And it's like, I don't know. It's just, I find it interesting where it's like, I would never go and try to speak above a professional in another field, like a lawyer or a doctor or a financial planner, something that I don't know anything about besides what I'm able to find on like social media. Like I would never go and like overcoach someone in that profession. So it's one thing if you're encouraging your kid to be working harder or trying harder, sure. But then when you start trying to coach your kid with, like, let's just say the strategy of the sport, when you don't maybe necessarily know, that gets a little tricky, because now you're miscommunicating what that kid should probably be doing too. On top of the delivery, sometimes, like we said, it's really not positive, which it can really be detrimental. I mean, I tell families this all the time. Like, I was very lucky to play the sport at a high level, and at least in Cleveland hockey, I started in the CSHL, which is the Cleveland Suburban Hockey League. It's basically like the most rec level of the sport in the city. And I finished my career essentially playing for the Monsters, which is the highest in the city, in the American Hockey League. And I tell people this, like, I did it because, I had loving support from my family, and they enabled me to go and play junior hockey and supported me through all that stuff. But it all started because I had great coaching in a great environment growing up. Like the early years of my career, like, cemented the foundation for my love of the sport, because I had great teammates. The parents were, for the most part, all really positive. And I look at it now, I'm 34, and my parents have been invited to so many weddings of like my former teammates and stuff. And it's just like, but everything was it was like a utopia, honestly, of like positivity. And it's like, I was the sum of that. And I look at it now and I see how frequently kids are jumping programs and going from tryout to tryout, or parents' interaction with coaches, or parents' interaction with their own children. And sometimes it's concerning, because it's like, I don't really know if it's going to be long-term. At the end of the day, every parent wants what's best for their kid, and they want their kid to play at the highest level they can. And in some degrees, they're, like you said, subconsciously probably sabotaging them. And it's unfortunate. It's certainly not my place to go and tell another parent how to raise their child, and I never will.
Right.
But when asked, I always share my candid experience of my coaching experience and what I see, because some little things can go a really long way for a kid's long-term development. And then, even maybe a bigger discussion is life after the sport. Unless you're, part of the fraction of a 1% that retires from their sport and never has to work another day because they're so financially set. Everybody's getting a job, and it's like, there should be so many positive lessons learned through the sport. And the sport itself, it's a game. It's just that. It should be fun. Any game you ever play is fun. And if you leave the sport damaged because of a mental abuse to some degree, like that's terrible, because any sport can offer a child so much. And, to hear sometimes the mental thing gets worn out, it kills me. It kills me inside.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just also unfortunate, because again, from just from one interaction, say with your child after a game or anything like that, even if you don't show up to the rink as a parent, the rink can now be what I like to call like a trigger, right? So they show up to the rink, and it triggers a past emotion, a past experience based on how our parents reacted, or we could even say the coaches, So the parent, don't think that just because you're not there, maybe your husband takes the kid to practice or to the game, or a neighbor, or you guys do carpool, whatever. Like, your damage goes so much farther than even just your presence. Your presence doesn't need to be felt, right? In order for the child to be going through some stuff mentally. And I think the last thing that we as parents want to do is to inflict that type of pain onto our children, and not allow this thing that they love so much to no longer be that for them, to be a source of love, right? In a world where there's so many sources of negativity out there, we want to make sure that we're keeping our sources of love and of happiness and excitement high. We don't have enough of those, unfortunately, in today's society, So So yeah.
Well, something with that too, though. Maybe parents can do a good job of really defining their expectations for why, like if you're putting your child in a sport for anything other than the pure enjoyment or maybe the physical benefit,
right,
or the health of the sport, then you're already in it with the wrong foot forward. You know what I mean? And I understand, especially when kids start to get competitive, and let's just say from like that 14 to 18 year window where, hey, now we're actually talking opportunities in the future of junior hockey or college hockey or beyond. Yeah, sure, I understand the stakes get higher, no question. But if you're in it because you're like, oh, well, this is my kid's, college education right here. Well, whoa, we got to have a whole different conversation, And I think that sometimes parents get a little, I think they get a little overzealous, or they don't have clear expectations of why they're doing what they're doing,
And I think that can be instantly connected in terms of you and what you're doing. You're chasing your passion, right? So your expectation through that is to continue to be passionate, to continue to have fun with it. And once those things start deteriorating, then maybe it's an avenue to start looking elsewhere. So I think if the parents can have the expectation only so that my child is having fun, I think the natural outcomes are going to be exactly that. They're going to be natural. They're going to be exactly what they're supposed to be. But I think, unfortunately, what's happening is that parents are getting lost in comparison of comparing their child to another parent's kid, right? And I think through that, it's creating so much toxicity. Or they're comparing their 12-year-old or 14-year-old to a player in the NHL. And you're setting your kid up for failure. And it's not fair to them, and it's not fair to you. All of the turmoil, all of the tension that's going to be created through that.
And it's funny that I hear that conversation all the time, and I no longer coach a full season team. I did for a few years, for 3 or 4 years, where I coached at a U16 and a U18 level, and I also assisted part time with the USHL team. But it's that comparison is absolutely detrimental. No player, you can be like-minded, or you can have, aspirations to play like another player, sure, or at a higher level. But when you start comparing your child to another child, like, it's your child's duty to be the best version of himself. And it shouldn't be like, oh, well, if you played more like Johnny over here, well, no, your son isn't Johnny. Your son is your son or daughter or whatever. And that's really, really dangerous territory, because it creates a lot of animosity between that child and his teammate. It also creates just a really negative expectation of like, well, maybe little Johnny is a natural goal scorer and little Rusty is a natural stay-at-home defenseman, which are very, very different roles. And I think what parents don't understand is you need like a lot of different roles, countless different roles to make a successful team, and countless different roles can have a successful experience in the sport and play at a great level. And like you said too, like comparing, sometimes parents might be blinded to compare it to a collegiate or professional level. It's like, well, that's crazy. Like that's a professional playing the sport at the highest possible level with disposable resources. Like that's not what your 14-year-old child is.
Right.
Or younger or whatever. But more than that, I just see comparing child to child. And that is the absolute worst thing any parent can ever do, because it's not fair to the other child who's just doing their thing and doing this, loving the sport and playing their hardest. And it's certainly very unfair to your own child, because your child is not that kid.
Yeah, sure. And I think another layer to that is, I think, unfortunately, when we're comparing our child to, making it to the NHL level, we're not comparing them to, who could we say, the Ryan Reeves, the fourth liners. We're always comparing them to the Austin Matthews, to the Patrick Kane, to the Crosby, the McDavid. And guess what? Your child, that may not be them. They might not have the hands. They might not be that goal scorer, but they may be that fourth line guy that's going to grind their way to the NHL and be blocking shots and being on the PK. So not only are you doing them a disservice by comparing, you're also comparing them to the wrong style of player, the wrong type of role player that your child is going to be. So they'll never, of course you can work on your hands in summer and they can get better, but Patrick Kane is on a whole nother level than anybody in the world. And you're choosing to compare your son or daughter, again, to that person.
Yeah, I guess like a funny perspective, if you flip it, that would be like a child saying, you know, Dad, you should be more like Elon Musk. Or Mom, why aren't you more like Oprah? You know what I mean? Like, those are like the most like iconic one percenters, which is exactly what Austin Matthews or, John Tavares, take your pick. It doesn't matter. They're all the same. But that's an extremely, that makes no sense to me.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because, I do a lot of work with the mental training with my buddy Matt. And whenever we're doing like our live coaching calls and webinars, we always ask the kids, how was this week in hockey? How'd your games go? Right. And we have like a group chat in WhatsApp. So the kids will send messages in and be like, hey, I want to be more like this. This is the kind of player I am. Who should I watch? And I think that's so powerful, right? To try and look up to guys that actually fit our mold as a player. It's terrible, again, like I said, to compare a fourth line guy to a first line guy, but understanding that you can make it being that like I remember my first year in Syracuse in the American League, our captain won a cup with Anaheim in 2007. He was your typical glass and out defenseman. Like in today's NHL, maybe that's not as valuable anymore, but to a certain degree, it's going to be. But I just looked at him. I was thinking, why would I compare myself to him? We're completely different guys, but I almost like made in my mind him like less than me, right? Because he wasn't an offensive defenseman. He wasn't a guy that was going to score goals. But again, what I'm trying to say is that there's different roles on every single team. And all those roles need to be filled. So just because your son or daughter isn't that Patrick Kane guy doesn't mean that they can't be successful in their sport. But you're doing them a disservice by trying to compare them to people that they're not, So I think I just wound up repeating myself there.
No, it's true though. I mean, I especially a lot of the kids I work with are at like a 14 to 18 window of AAA hockey where they're knocking on the doorstep of junior hockey and maybe college hockey, and naturally they get hung up on statistics.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately that is a driving factor of recruiting to some degree.
Right.
And it's like I try to explain to kids, I'm like, well, your goal, like maybe if I had a more of a stay-at-home defenseman, I go, well, the first thing that a scout would be looking at for your role is, did you finish every hit? Did you, how were you on the penalty kill? How was your first pass? They're not looking at how many goals you scored this year, because they already have their power play defenseman that's going to run the umbrella. That's not you. It's never going to be you.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that, like, I think I kind of call it like the identity crisis, where like, I think sometimes kids they see like, oh, well, I need to go score more goals. It's like, yeah, sure. If you can chip in on the offense, that's wonderful. But you need to have your set of strengths, and every single player in any single sport has their own unique set of strengths. And you got to dominate like 2 or 3 things in your lane. And then if you can add more layers to your game, absolutely. Of course you should. But if you're just like below average in like 5 things, well, I'd rather take the player that's like an exceptional at one thing, because I can plug them in, and that's where I think a lot of kids, I think they lose sight of, or maybe they get blinded by statistics, and are they important? Yeah, sure. They tell a part of the story, but by no means do they tell the whole story.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, it's important to remember what our strengths are in terms of that you don't get too lost in the things that maybe you can't do well, right? Because there's always going to be people out there, the critics, the people behind the glass, the people behind, the social media accounts. They're always going to point out your weaknesses. And I think that is enough. That's time, that's the perfect time for you to triple down on your strengths. Like, so yes, always work on the things that you're good at. And then naturally you're going to start seeing the things that you're not good at. And of course you want to give them attention. I'm not saying stay away from them, but by identifying and realizing our weaknesses, we now turn them into strengths, because now they're going to be things that we're going to actively be working on. But I think for myself, my first year, again, I was down in Syracuse, and I was an offensive defenseman, but on that particular team, they needed more from me. And I got so lost in trying to do all these other things that I lost sight of the things that I was good at that got me to that level. And then my career went down very fast, because again, I was trying to focus on all these things that these outsiders were telling me to do, which is, again, it's valuable, But again, I put 100% of my focus into that and 0% of focus in, again, what got me to that level, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's one thing to be well-rounded, which is what every player you want to try to be.
Yeah.
But you don't want to lose sight of your core strengths.
Yeah.
Because that, again, any player that makes any team, and I don't care if we're talking about a squirt team here in Cleveland or if you're talking about an NHL team, every player was selected to play on any team because of something that coaching staff saw that you brought to the table.
Mm-hmm.
So the second that you lose that, now you're kind of in like a tailspin. Like now a coach doesn't know how to use you, where to play you, you're unhappy, you're not performing well. Like, and it's funny because like before tryouts and when I do a lot of stuff with kids in the springtime and at the end of the winter. And of course, every kid is all, stressed out for tryouts. And I tell them, I'm like, man, just go and be the best version of yourself. And if a coach doesn't fall in love with you there, then you don't want to play there. Mm-hmm. It's that simple.
Yeah.
But kids are like focused on doing this and scoring goals and making big plays, or I don't know really what kids are focused on half the time, but it's like, just go and just be the perfect version of yourself. Try your hardest, be a great teammate, maybe go up and shake the coach's hand, be polite, be respectful, work as hard as you possibly can, make it evident that you're working as hard as you possibly can. No regrets after that.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think people actually, the kids that we're talking about here is let's just stop the comparison. Let's just focus on ourselves. Let's focus on what we can do daily throughout a season in order to be our best selves, the best version of ourselves, which Russ has talked a lot about. So I think, buddy, that can be it. So before we end it here, is there anything you would like to say to kind of maybe for the parents, anything you'd like to leave the parents with in terms of maybe how they can approach a better relationship with their son or daughter to lessen the damage that they're doing currently?
Yeah, I mean, I just think as long as parents are always stepping with the foot forward of like why their child's playing the game and how to positively and lovingly support that. As long as that's always at the core of your thought process and your delivery, probably more than anything, your delivery, I mean, good things will happen. But, love your child and know that your child loves the sport, and that should be enough, and make it a positive experience for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Alrighty, buddy. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. Lots of powerful stuff you had to say there. Truly grateful for this experience with you.
My name is Jeff LoVecchio. Played professional hockey for 10 years, and now I own RIPT Hockey, where I trained elite hockey players in St. Louis.
Okay, very nice. And I lived in St. Louis for one summer. I think you remember that. I remember rumblings back then that you kind of had this stuff kind of going on back then. This was, 6-7 years ago, summer of 2012 or 13, something like that. So it's been maybe a long process for you to get to where you are now, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. I had a concussion before even my first year pro after I signed and played in the American League, and I wound up missing my whole first year professionally with that. Wound up coming back from it. But so after my third year, I just knew I had another one that year where I got hit from behind and like had a bunch of bones and my face fractured and knocked out again. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna start this company, like, just in case, something bad happens, at least I'll have some experience doing it. And I just wanted to give back to hockey players in St. Louis as well. And started with 2 clients that summer. And by going into my 10th year pro, I think I worked with like 150 just over the off season, just over the summer in like 4 or 5 months. It grew pretty big and got to a point where I was like, all right, I think I'll be better at this. I can help more people and I don't have to risk my brain anymore because I had quite a few concussions. So
yeah, for sure, man. Wow. That's incredible. And obviously to get to this point, I know the GMBM, the give more, be more, right? Like fucking incredible, following you on Instagram and everything. And one thing I like the most, I would have to say, is honestly you like cleaning up your hotel room every time before you leave. And it's so fascinating to me because what you're doing, right, is just making somebody else's life easier. And I do the same stuff too, like shopping carts in the grocery store and stuff. So what is really the premise behind it? Obviously, give more, be more. I understand that, but where did kind of that thought process really come from?
Yeah, I was at a big convention for a supplement company that I was working with using after like around Christmas time. My first year not playing anymore. My first year I went with another ex-hockey player, and they were into this supplement company, wanted me to get into it. And it was like one of those, I imagined it was going to be like one of those things you see on TV where like you go there and everybody's drinking the Kool-Aid and everybody's like just like too much. And I went there and it was kind of like that, but it was like real. Like it wasn't fake. It was like people that just wanted to help other people like lose weight and for the most part. I was getting into it to help my business and help have like quality nutrition for my guys. And it just like this like positive energy at this thing. It was like a couple thousand people like in this one massive convention center for the whole week. And it was just like so much positive energy. It was like unbelievable. And I was like, all right, like I think I'm a good person, but I can be better and I can be better with my family and kind of like I don't know why I thought of it. I was like, I need to give more and then I'll be more. And then my flight got delayed to go home for 2 days. So I was sitting around in Arizona by myself and went and got that tattooed on me. And then, just started talking about that and trying to do things where I could just like give more to people. And like the easiest ways, like you said, one of them was just when I go to a hotel, like I think about, those people, they probably don't love doing that job. The people who come in and clean the rooms, they probably do it more of they're trying to help their family and whatever their circumstances are. And I was like, well, I can help them have like at least like 5 minutes of a better day or smile when they walk in my room after I've left, not tornadoing the room. Like I'm sure a lot of kids do, not thinking that, hey, there's somebody who's got to clean this up. Right. So I put that on Instagram. I just try and show people like things that I do just to inspire people or try and help people with whatever.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, again, like I said, after following you here now, it seems like it's freaking gaining big popularity, posting, kids around the world, it looks like, repping your company. What has the reception been like, especially there in St. Louis?
Yeah. I mean, it's all my clients, like they all obviously know what it is. I have Give More, Be More written in massive letters in my gym here in St. Louis. The kids all like buying my clothes and like I got my pros wearing the hoodies and stuff. So that's really cool. But like the main thing for me is, and the reason that I approached this company that worked with another company I worked with. So had like kind of a business hook up there and talked to them. I was like, hey, I just want to get these shirts for my clients. I want them to Give More, Be More written on their shirts. So if they're having a bad day or they're having a hard time in the gym and they're like, I'm tired and they're looking for excuses and they look down, like I wanted them to see that, like give more, be more, and like be like, all right, if I want to be more, like don't give up on the set, or like give my 100 and don't be okay giving 90. That's where it kind of started. And then it turned into like me designing clothes with Humble Hockey, my partners in that venture. And now it's just like, I don't know, it's becoming a thing. And it's not like it's huge or anything, but it's pretty cool. And I have some like organizations want to order from me and like teams and things like that. So I think that's really cool. I wanted to make it a cool looking brand that you didn't know like what it was, but like people who didn't know what the message is behind it. And it's just like you look down and you get inspired. Like, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to go harder, that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's incredible. And then going back to the RIPT hockey. So what is like your target, age group, or is that irrelevant? You're just wanting to help hockey players around the world, or what's that like?
Well, it started just like in St. Louis, and I have a massive passion for helping kids in St. Louis reach their potential, whatever that may be. Just because like when I was growing up, just like probably a lot of people everywhere, but like more so when I was growing up here in St. Louis, like we didn't have guys coming back. We didn't have guys who were like making it and then retiring and coming back until I was already out of the St. Louis system. So I kind of wanted to help guys in any way I could. And I didn't make it to signing in any contract by being just like nasty. Like I had to figure out any way I could to find those like little tiny 1 degree separators. And I tried to find them everywhere I could, stay relevant and get better and things like that. So my thought process is, well, if I'm working with the best kids and I can tell them these things that I did to get me where I was, like how good are they going to be? Mm-hmm. So I started off working with pretty much anyone. And now as my company grows, like I focus on pretty much like the elite players in St. Louis. So like NHL, AHL, D1, juniors, USHL. And then like probably down to 13-year-old AAA players. But every year I get more and more pros. And unfortunately, there's only so many hours in the day. So that's why I started doing this online training with Train Heroic, who I partnered with to give out my programs and sell them online for cheap. Because my thing is, like, I want people to be able to train with a real program, someone coaching them, actual videos, so they don't have to like not know what they're doing or do it wrong, which is like, you know, it could be dangerous or whatever for them. So this way they can still have a great training experience and not have an excuse saying, oh, I don't have a trainer. Well, now like you're doing exactly what my AHL guys are doing. You know, you don't have an excuse. So you can buy a cheap gym pass, or you can do this at home, and you will get better for you know, pennies on the dollar of what it costs to train with a good strength coach.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's incredible. Lots of good stuff going on for you, right? And one thing I wanted to talk about too is you know, I put it on my Instagram, that mind-body connection. I see you have your players doing all this breathing, either before the workouts, but I think it's mainly coming at the end, really try and calm that nervous system down. Would you share a little bit about that and kind of how you went that direction?
Like I said, I was always looking. Dog's barking here. I was looking for like that 1 degree of how can I get a little bit better? How can I get a little bit better? And I got into meditation like probably my 7th year pro. When I went to Japan, my coach was Canadian, and he was super into meditation, and I tried, but I wasn't good at it. I'm not good at quieting my mind. It's always going. And he told me about Headspace, this app, and that helped me immensely. So like that, I'd already been into like breathing and learning how to breathe, and I'd done Wim Hof and, you know, focused on like different breathing counts and diaphragmatic breathing and meditation. So I was like, all right, like obviously, and Mike said, you know, what else do we do 20,000 times a day as humans? Nothing. So obviously breathing has to be important. So I like learned more about breathing, experimented with myself, my own workouts, and just found, and then with the kids found that like their minds are going so fast. Like they're on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, emails, homework, like their phone, like it's nonstop, and they don't even know it, but their brain is just always probably releasing dopamine when they look at their Facebook and they see likes, or they go to their Instagram. So like, how can we calm them down and like get them to like learn to be? And so like the best time when kids are tired is after you them in a workout. So I'm like, all right, this is how we start the recovery process, shifting from sympathetic to parasympathetic. So immediately they get into rest and digest, and I'm also getting them at a time when I tell them, if you start talking, I'm kicking you out of the gym. That's how serious I take it. And since they respect me, they won't do it, or else I will kick them out of the gym. But that it's teaching them like how important breathing is and how it can calm you down and how meditation is powerful. So like, instead of, you know, I'm more like plants over pills. So I think that like learning how to heal yourself and do these things to calm yourself down rather than taking some kind of pill or something is an invaluable skill. So it's been cool to see them like they ask for it. What song are we meditating to today? What are we breathing to? And then for them kids that are guys, kids, whoever, to text me and be like, hey man, I did the meditation and I slept so much better because I calmed my mind before bed. And like, that makes you such a better human, not only a hockey player. So I love that stuff.
And how would you say that could directly almost correlate into the pregame nerves that we all at some point are going to start experiencing with? Have you had any talks with your players in terms of maybe visualization or meditation, maybe a little bit before games as well?
100%. I tell anyone I work with or any of the kids that I coach, I tell them like the visualization stuff that I used to do, the way I used to run through face-off, wins and losses all throughout the ice, like sitting up in the stands, just taking 5 minutes, seeing catch breakout passes, seeing myself standing in front of the net and tipping pucks in, seeing myself, you know, beating a guy to the back wall in the power play to keep the puck in, like stuff like that, like just those little things, and just going there over and over and over in your mind, and just how important and powerful your mind could be when you learn how to use it to your advantage. So yeah, always talking about that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You know, towards the end of my career, you know, sometimes I wouldn't visualize so much other than just on the ice, smiling and feeling good, knowing my legs are feeling good, feeling powerful. And sometimes that was even more, you know, rewarding for myself than, you know, trying to vision myself in the corner or in front of the net and things like that. So, and to go back to what you said, plants over pills, I believe you have some type of connection, right? With, is it the Veda?
Yeah. I'm a brand ambassador for Veda, or athlete. ambassador, and then I'm on their board for like strength coach and trainers and people like that. I'm also an investor. After I used it for a couple of months, I was completely sold on. I've never felt better in my life. And I'm somebody who's had over 10 concussions. So it was really cool to see how much CBD helped me just like to sleep, to recover, to feel better, cognitive function, all these things, you know. And I had been on antidepressants because of my concussions, not because I was depressed, but I had this problem with my vestibular system coming back from my bad one, where my ears and my eyes had a problem talking, and I did vestibular rehab and all these things. And the pills definitely helped me 100%. There was like a side effect of this one antidepressant that had positive effects on your vestibular system. So, you know, I didn't want to take those pills forever. So was looking for a way to get out of that, and found Veda, or they found me, and we started talking. And yeah, it's that's been a game changer for sure.
Oh man, I can imagine. And would you say, had you had that maybe back in your career, maybe you could have then extended your career?
Yeah, I mean, who knows? You know, it's so hard to say. I mean, the way that they treated my concussion and my post-concussion syndrome, like now, that would never have happened. Like, it was ridiculous. It wasn't anyone's fault, just ridiculous in the fact that like that's what the protocols were. Mm-hmm. And just like sitting around until you feel good to ride the bike, and then, oh, you had a bad day, we'll sit around for 2 or 3 more days, don't do anything, try the bike. Oh, you don't feel good, sit around 2 or 3. Like, that's not what they do now. It's not, you know. And luckily I learned that in the beginning, but like, you know, that concussion, if it was a month or something, you know, who knows how that would have affected me, as opposed to 15 or 14 months or whatever it was, you know. So, yeah, that was a tough one.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I'm kind of going all over the place in terms of my questions here, but I also now I'm jumping back again here in terms of the training you do. I also see that you train these kids' parents too.
Yeah.
What has that been like? Because, you know, for myself, like, I think a lot about the parent-player relationship and how sometimes the parents can get in the way, but now they're in the gym working out with you, so maybe there's a different relationship going on here. So what has that been like?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I had a couple people ask me over the years, oh, would you train like parents? And I was like, no, I just want to keep it to the hockey players. I don't really want to work with general population. That's just me. I like to like push people hard and people who want to push really hard or whatever. So, but I had some new clients, the Frederick brothers, last year, they're both pro hockey players now. Grant just graduated from Miami last week, and Trent's with the Bruins system. And they're like, hey, you know, our dad wants to work out with you. And those kids are the best people ever. And I was like, all right, yeah, I'll train your dad. And then that turned into his dad and his one uncle. And then his dad has 2 uncles. Then his dad is two uncles and their best friend. And then everybody started seeing I was training them. So then I had some groups of moms asking me, will you train us? And my thing during the hockey season is like, I'm not as busy. I work very hard in the summer, so I don't have to work as hard the rest of the year. And that's when all the guys are home, right, for the off season. So I was like, all right, I'll take a couple of you on, but it wound up being like actually very rewarding and extremely fun. And it also helped me build even a better culture within my company and better bonds with my players, because I know what's going on. I know how their parents are. If I know one of the parents are hard on their son, like I know that's going on. So when he comes in the gym in a certain way, I know why, kind of things like that. So it's just been a cool thing all around. And I think probably moving forward, those are probably the only real general population clients I'll probably train, just because I like that connection and it builds that culture within the company.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's impressive stuff, because I think, like you said, sometimes you know that these kids got maybe a different situation going on at home. And the fact that you're aware of that, again, I think about myself and my past, like, hockey was my outlet, right? For most of us, right? But I had my at-home shit, you know, as well. So going to the hockey rink was literally my escape from my reality. But then I get to the hockey rink and I got coaches screaming at me and shit like that, and it wound up not being so much fun. You know what I mean? So the signs are there, and the fact that you're aware of this, I think, man, just fucking mad props to you for that. Like, that's incredible. Another thing I wanted to talk about is just that transition out of hockey. I'm in that process myself. There's many players I know that have been through that process. Would you say, and then this is going to be for current pros, or it doesn't even matter, making sure we've got something lined up before we make that final decision that it's going to be done? And if not, what do you think the like mental impacts could be on guys if they don't have that thing and now they're without hockey?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that I've learned over the last 2 years going through that process. And I was very lucky that I started that company, and then lucky that site that when it got hard to play and train that many people in the summer, like that was very taxing on my body, training 2-3 hours a day and then having to train 50 guys like in the day like that. But I was like, you know what, this is going to set myself up. Like I know it. And then the season kind of became my off season. Like the season was easy because I was only working an hour at practice a day. Mm-hmm. So like the season was actually hilariously easy my last like 4 years playing, because it was like, oh, I only got to work 2 hours. Like, this is great. You know, I can take a nap today. So that was funny. But we had somebody on our podcast who works with the NHL, actually, my cousin and I, and he works on helping players kind of find those outside interests. And they found that like the guys who start learning new skills or start, you know, shadowing somebody in whatever field they're interested in during the season, they wind up having like more successful seasons. Because I think for multiple reasons, probably one, like working your brain in different ways is going to open up like new pathways and things and get them firing. So like more brain capacity, more working just makes sense. Like simplistically that maybe you'll be able to think faster on the ice or something, or think differently. Mm-hmm. And then two, obviously then you know what you like, and you can probably, you know, kiss some frogs and find out what you don't like over a couple of off seasons. Ooh, you know what? I did that for 2 months and I really don't want to work at a desk 8 hours a day for the rest of my life. Now I know that. Now I can look at something else. So I think that especially if any pro athletes, like they should use their leverage of their professional status to call friends and whoever and say, hey, you know, I'm home for the summer. You know, they know you're a pro athlete, or tell them you are and say, can I come shadow you? And, you know, people want to be around pro athletes because it's not easy being a pro, which is why a lot of companies then go after pro athletes. Right. So I just think setting yourself up you don't even have to look at it setting yourself up, because I think guys will be like, I don't want to take my eye off today. I don't want to take my eye off the season. And it's like, well, you're not. You're just learning what else you're going to do, what else you like, things like that. Because Wayne Gretzky had to retire. Mario Lemieux had to retire. You're definitely going to have to retire. You know, it's like you're not them. You're definitely going to have to retire. Yeah. So, like, you should learn some interests and gain some other skills. And then, I mean, my transition was easy. But the second point that I got to make is I think guys should continue to work out. I see too many guys just so excited to not have to train. And there's so many positive chemicals released in your body and in your brain when you work out. And we're used to pushing ourselves day after day after day. And then so many guys just stop cold turkey. It's probably like stopping doing drugs, I would guess. Like you get hooked on it and then your body's not getting those chemicals. And you used to get them every day from exercising and now you're not. So that's one of the reasons that I think a lot of guys get depressed, and then that leads to getting overweight and unhealthy and, you know, maybe doing bad things. So I think continuing to work out and finding a way that you like to work out, because it's really nice to not have somebody tell you, hey, you got to run a 300 in under 58 seconds anymore. Like, I don't ever have to do that again, you know, like, so I can work out in a way that I like to work out. So it becomes more of a fun thing. So I think guys should focus, and girls should focus on that as well.
Yeah. And in terms of working out, again, you know, I think I saw a shift in your training, going from fucking trying to just put on all the weight in the world, right? And now it seems like you shift into more body awareness, right? And being more of that athlete. How important would you say that is too in today's game, for sure, for the hockey players out there that are listening?
100%. I mean, I was going through that shift a while ago. I mean, there are phases where we lift heavy, but like, I'm not really into like a lot of bilateral lifts, which is two limbs. The bench press would be a dumbbell or a barbell bench press where you have to use both arms at the same time. That would be bilateral. Back squat, that would be bilateral. It doesn't mean that we never do them. I mean, I personally never back squat anyone. I don't load the spine. But there's phases where we'll do that, but a lot more phases are single limb in nature, lateral, contralateral, way more about training as an athlete. Like, cause I was very fast on the ice. Like that's what I was known for. And I was strong and I was powerful, fast. Okay, why can't I just beat guys wide? Because I didn't have like the ability to stop as well, because I wasn't I was working on all strength, power, not athleticism while being powerful, being able to stop and start on a dime and controlling the puck while doing that. Like, I didn't have that ability because when I was younger, I mean, all I focused on was like strength, power, like that stuff. And I think, yes, you need to do those. You need to be those things, but I want to train the guys to be those things through an athletic channel rather than just lifting, because I think that I can get the athleticism out of them through the way we lift and the things we do in the gym versus like, okay, we'll work on strength now, we'll work on agility now, we'll work on athleticism now. I try and kind of put it all together.
Absolutely. Okay, so Vex, you wake up in the morning, what's your routine like before you put yourself in the gym to fucking start hammering out these workouts?
Started doing something different recently. I try and wake up at like 5 a.m. now. I'm trying to go to bed at like 9 or 10. I can't even tell you like how productive my days are. I've always been a night owl. And me with like Russian history, the only time I ever really like feel it or don't feel great is if I couple nights in a row with bad sleep. Poor quality, not enough time, combination of the both. So like I know that I need to sleep to feel good. So getting up at 5 has forced me to go to bed early, and I just fall asleep at like 9 o'clock now like a nerd, but it works. Circadian rhythm, that's supposed to be good for you, all these things. So I wake up around 5. I have either a black coffee or green tea right away, and then like an hour after that. So it'd be like half an hour before I go to the gym. I'll have some BCAAs and my creatine. I do have a little bit of pre-workout. I can't lie, shouldn't, but I do work out. And then if I was training guys, I would work out for myself. Then afterwards, I would just train guys all day long for like 12 hours, 14 hours in the off season.
Wow.
Yeah, it's long days. So with COVID, I'm probably going to go less guys. Maybe, I don't know. I kind of got to see what happens when we come back here, how that's going to work.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my day.
Fucking right. And what is the situation like? Are the rinks going to be opening up there at all soon, or?
June 15th, the rinks are supposed to open here, but a bunch of stuff came out from the CDC today that they're saying that the virus doesn't live on surfaces as long, and I don't know, some other things. And there's a gym here that sued the Missouri government, saying that the state of Missouri, that like it's unconstitutional to keep gyms closed. So they just took it to federal court actually. So, I mean, we could be open like on Monday, I've heard, but June 15th is what I've heard for a while now.
Wow. Okay. Fucking rights, man. Well, I got nothing, no other questions popping. Well, you mentioned a podcast. That's the hockey think tank. How's that thing? How did that come about?
My cousin Topher Scott was a coach at Cornell for 5 years. Just got out of that, was kind of decided what he was going to do, and he came up with this hockey think tank website, and people were really liking the things he was doing and kind of some videos that he was putting out. He was like one of the first guys to put out like videos on Twitter showing like things that were happening in the NHL from like not ESPN and stuff like that. And he got a lot of like people talking about him and all this stuff and people watching it. And so he called me one day. He's like, "You want to do a podcast with me?" And I was like, I just said yes because he's a genius and I've always looked up to him and I love him and he's a role model of mine. I was like, yeah, man, I'll do a podcast. Didn't even know what that meant. I mean, I watched Joe Rogan's podcast, but like that's it. And the first episode was him just like going over my career, my concussion, and why I am who I am now and what I do and things like that. And then like we just started getting guests on and talking about hockey and their journey, and it blew up. And we've probably done like 110 or 115 episodes. We have over 300,000 downloads, 310,000 downloads. So it's like, it's getting pretty big. And in the hockey world, like it's pretty cool. I was at airport one time and this guy was standing next to me and I was just talking to one of the kids I coach. And he's like, "Are you the guy in the hockey think tank? I recognize your voice." And it was obviously at a hockey tournament, but that was pretty funny that happened. And we started talking and he's, "I listen to every episode." So, but we've had on like mental coaches and resiliency coaches, nutritionists, Martin St. Louis, like D1 coaches, pro coaches. Cam Jansen, who like that was a great episode. Robbie Shrimp. We've had all these different types of people, men and women in the hockey world, that just try and help parents and hockey players and whoever.
Yeah. Okay. And then last question here. I think you one of the guys you train in the Special Olympics. Is that correct?
Paralympics. Yeah, Paralympics. It's Josh Pauls. Yeah, guy's an absolute animal.
Yeah.
Absolute animal. Like, man, and I didn't even when he first asked me to start training him, I was like, I've never trained a Paralympic athlete before. Like, I'll read up on it, but like, this isn't something I've ever done before. And he's like, no, it's totally fine. Like, we'll learn as we go. You'll learn from me. I'll learn from you. Yada yada yada. And the guy is like an absolute animal. He's a hilarious human being. He's just all these things. I mean, there's a reason that he's got 3 gold medals and then 1 million world championship medals. And he's got a beer named after him here in St. Louis. He's got a book out that he wrote. Like, he's a professional speaker. He's just a really, really good dude. And I would encourage anybody out there who's looking for a good book to read to check out Josh Paul's book, the captain of the men's sled hockey team.
Yeah. Okay. And how does that help you when you are training your clients, the hockey players, to like maybe gain some inspiration, guys, from this guy? Look at, he's got, in the Paralympics, like, you think you can't do this? Look at this guy. Has that ever come into the picture at all during training sessions?
I have a couple of guys who are junior hockey players who are coming back from injuries over last hockey season, and I would always make sure they were coming in after Josh. So and I would make sure they would come in when they would see Josh leaking and, doesn't have his legs on and crushing it. And, and I'm like, all right, like, what's your excuse? Like, it didn't even need to be said, but like, just kind of like, oh, you don't want to work hard? Oh, okay. All right. Who was in here before you? Okay. That's what I thought. Let's go. So,
all right.
Perspective is a powerful tool.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Sometimes if you need a little motivation, just change your perspective, and that's fucking all you need. Right.
Exactly.
So for anybody listening, any type of advice, suggestions, this is kind of stayed in terms of hockey training, things like that. What would be your advice for anybody listening?
For anybody listening that want to learn about training, like, Google and YouTube can be your best friend. Like, you need to learn who to follow, but there's so much free information on Instagram, on YouTube. There's so much bad information, like very bad. Like, just because somebody's hot doesn't mean they know what they're doing. And conversely, like, somebody's out of shape doesn't mean they don't know what they're doing too. Like, or what you think's out of shape, right? But there's so much free information out there. And there's somebody that trains with a professional that you could say, hey, like, can I talk to them? Give me their number. Like, and if you don't have them, DM me on Instagram and ask me questions, because I answer all of them. And there's somebody out there to help. Newts will help. Yeah. Like, weren't you a Czech guy, Mike? Weren't you doing that stuff back in the day?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I do. I'm very much into all the body awareness stuff, but the Czech, I don't know if we're talking about the same thing, but it was when I was living in St. Louis, I got hooked up with have you heard of Jackie Albus?
No, I haven't.
I'm not sure if she's in St. Louis any longer, but she was my trainer when I was living there 7 years ago. I would train with her a couple times a week, but she got me hooked up with this guy. Can't remember his name, Jason something. He got me connected with Paula Quinn. And she was Czech certified, CHEK. I don't know if that's the same thing that you're talking about.
Yeah.
You do that body assessment, you find your weaknesses. That shit is next level. That
I'm not a Czech guy, but I played with guys who are right after, I was hanging out with you that summer and skating with you. So I learned about it. But it's like, ask me, like, reach out to people on Instagram, like, follow people that other people you trust are following, and then learn from them. There's so much free information out there that I personally think there's no excuse to like not learning to train your body correctly, whether you're an athlete or you're just somebody who wants to be healthy or a productive human. Like, if your body goes, your quality of life goes. So like, why aren't you taking care of your body? Why aren't you taking care of your temple, your pyramid? The better in shape you are, the more fun things you can do for more amount of time on this earth. If you only get one amount of time on it, like, you might as well enjoy it. So keep your body tight.
Yeah, absolutely. Another, I love that we're talking because more questions are coming. What is your opinion on off-ice cardio? For myself, real quick, just why I'm asking, because when I first signed with Anaheim, it was fucking cardio every day. We're doing tempo runs, we're doing shuttle runs, and I'm throwing up sometimes. But then I'm never really feeling good going into the gym the next day. And then towards the end of my career, my favorite trainer that I've had, he's from Finland. He was working with the top team next to Jokerit in Finland. So one of the top, strength and conditioning positions in Finland. And through their program, it was no more cardio off the ice. It was mind-body connection off the ice. Maybe some bike sprints, doing some crazy breathing on the bikes. But what is your philosophy in terms of off-ice cardio?
I don't think it really translates. I think that it's more like the way that I program workouts, like your heart rate's elevated like most of the time. I mean, not for every workout. Obviously, every phase is different. So I guess that's a stupid blanket statement to say. When we're really going, like the way that we lift, you can lift weights and your heart rate can be up like you're running. But you're also getting the benefits of strength training and plyometrics and all these other things. So like I will do like agility, but like more to be a better athlete than to be like, all right, like we're just going to do cardio so your heart rate gets up. So that's good. So you're good on the ice, because I don't believe in that. I believe in short sprints, just working on fast twitch muscle fibers. We don't do any runs over 40 yards ever. Like we'll do shuttles at the end of the summer because guys have to, and this is one thing I don't like, guys have to test it. So if a guy has to test it, unfortunately, whether I think that's going to help him in hockey or not, part of his job or college or juniors is you got to pass that test to be able to play. So you do got to do those things, and it'll help. It'll help on the ice for general heart rate stuff, heart rate variability and recovery and things like that. But, once you get on the ice, it doesn't matter. It's completely different.
Isn't it fucked, man? Like you can train all summer, right? And then you get on the ice day one and you're just gassed. It's like, what did I just do for the last 4 months or 3 months? I don't understand it, and I don't think I ever will.
I think it's just because there's so much shifting between anaerobic and aerobic on the ice. Like you're going every shift, it's like aerobic, anaerobic, and then like sprint, glide, like, or stride slow, and then slowly. Like it's just like this, and then there's strength, so much strength while you're hitting guys or pushing. Like there's so much going on in hockey that you just can't train all of those things in the gym. And I don't even think that you should necessarily, because you blow it out. Like it's too hard to do that all year. Yeah. So.
Well, and you think too, like you do all your strength training, and then a lot of times the cardio is coming at the end of the training session when your muscles are fucking a lot less than they were coming in, and now you're just potentially causing more harm than good to your body, right?
Right. We do all our stuff in the beginning. I mean, because we're only doing very short cardio, quote unquote cardio, short sprint, short agility, because like that's the most important thing to me. Obviously strength is, but like if your heart rate dies after 10 seconds, you can't take a shift. So like you got to be an athlete, you got to be able to move. So
yeah, for sure. I again, now that my career is done, I think I want to start getting into like trail running. So I'm freaking doing like some hill sprints. And man, if I were to think of any like cardio that did translate, it would maybe be hill sprints, because it's a pretty long hill. So it's consistent work, 25 seconds. It doesn't have to be like that, but I choose to make it like that. And man, you're getting the burn, you're getting the explosiveness because you're going uphill. But fuck, I did long distance running and all that stuff, but just crap. And maybe that's why my knees are so bad now. I don't know, but.
Could be. Yeah, we never run over 40 yards unless it's the end of the summer and we're training for the shuttle tests. Yeah. Unfortunately, we'll have to do that, but I wish we didn't have to.
Yeah, and what about yourself? Are you getting on the ice at all anymore, or?
Because of my concussions, it's hard for me. Like I didn't have to retire. I still was getting offers for the same amount of money from the year before.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of concussions, and so every time I put my gear on, I'll play with the Blues alumni when they have games. Every time I put my gear on, I get hit in the puck, and I'm like, what? Somebody trying to tell me something? So like my first time like putting my gear on and playing in like any type of like game, men's league or anything, Barrett Jackman, like wrist shot right to the face. And I was like, oh my God, like, come on, man. Like, this is why I retired. But like, you can't put a price on hanging with the boys in the locker room. So I just got to be better at not playing the way that I used to. I got to be a perimeter guy and pretend I have skill and stay on the outside instead of always just standing in front like an idiot.
Yeah, you don't want to be blocking shots right in friggin' adult league. But you guys have Go ahead.
Are you gonna get into playing men's league? Are you gonna be that guy, or are you gonna take a bit off, or what?
I don't know. I'm actually going to go skate tomorrow because, like I said, this whole situation, I don't have the gym in it, so my cardio has gone down significantly. My season was canceled, 2 months ago, so I'm going to go and skate tomorrow, and I'm very excited for it, just for the pure fact that I know I'm going to sweat a lot.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to be sore after. I'm not looking forward to the warm up that I don't have the option to not do before.
Right.
Because towards the end of my career, my knees were starting to go, and it's like my warm ups, like fuck it, it's an hour long, and I don't have the option to skip anything.
Yeah.
But another question that just came to mind: what was your experience like in Japan? I had thoughts about trying to go and do that too. Like you talked about it, like it was like you're a celebrity over there.
Oh, it was great, man. Like I was very fortunate to get over there. Like most of the guys that played in the league when I was there had NHL games. Like there's only 3 imports on every team, and the one team had Stefan Veilleux. He had 505 show games, and then their other 2 guys both had a handful of games too. So it was a hard league to get into, but luckily I did really, really well in Austria the year before, and my line mate was friends with the coach on that team. So he called him and was like, hey, he'll come in and score for you guys, whatever. And luckily I got there, and I loved every second of it. Like obviously it's a little bit tough being in a country where like no one speaks English, like literally no one, in the city I was in. But we had a translator everywhere we went. On the ice, coach would be talking on the board. Our translator had skates on. The 3 imports would huddle around him, and he would translate to us what the coach was saying. Wow. He didn't play hockey either, so that was pretty funny. He was a baseball guy, so he couldn't skate, so that was hilarious. But a really nice guy. And, man, like we flew everywhere except for one team that was just a couple hours away. The league was Japan, Russia, South Korea, and China. So flew everywhere. I got my own room on every single road trip except for one for 2 years, and like we stayed in nice hotels. Our budget was massive. Our team was owned by the company that makes Kleenex, the brand, Japanese paper company. Yeah, so I mean it was the league was so much fun. Like the hockey was actually really good, just a really different style, very skilled, very fast, super fast, but less thinking. Very fun hockey though to play for sure.
Well, fuck, it sounds like maybe you should have gone over there years before, right? Like,
I tried actually. I tried when I left the U.S. I had an offer with one team, and I kind of got talked out of going over there. And I was like, man, I would have made $1 million tax free if I could have been here for a good amount of time and finished my career here, But 2 years was awesome. Had a great time. Very thankful for it. It made person learning to work around like cultural barriers that I had never had to deal with, even in Europe. Like even playing in Hungary, like nothing compared to like the cultural and ideological barrier and difference between an American and a Japanese person. So that was really cool to like learn those idiosyncrasies and kind of how different people live and think and evolve, work and stuff like that.
Yeah, and how was it? I know for myself, again, speaking for myself, that, as imports going over there to Europe, at the first couple weeks, 3 weeks, it's really great building those friendships with those guys. But then they kind of just wind up sticking to themselves, right? Speaking their own language, even if they can't speak yours. So it's almost like you're secluded. You're on an island a little bit. So I can't even imagine what it was like in Japan. But how did you stay positive and stay sane, and especially a country that nobody speaks English?
The guys were good guys. There was a couple guys on the team that spoke like decent English, and one guy spoke very good English, and he was all our best friends on the team. We hung out with him a lot. If he wasn't on the team, it would have definitely been with the boys. They all liked us, and we'd talk with the translator between them, and by the end of the year you could say enough Japanese and they could maybe say enough English back to you to, have conversations, and you get really good at using your hands. But yeah, I mean, like you said, you're definitely going to stick with the imports more, but it also is kind of a cool experience because you really get to learn about less guys on the team and become really good friends with some of those guys. And some of the guys I played with in Europe, like, I'll be really good friends with forever just because we spent so much time together because, you only got a couple guys to choose from to hang out with, so you're going to hang out with some guys more than others and stuff like that and bond over being away and missing your family and home and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. And do you have any type of talks with guys? Because I feel like, I've had a lot of talks with guys that are from St. Louis that, trying to just cling on to this hope, right, of making it to the NHL level or hoping to get that call back up to the AHL. Would you say, get your ass over to Europe because you can build yourself an incredible career over there?
Yeah, and that's the hardest part, and I got guys I train who are in that situation now or were or will be, and they're kind of, when is the time? And I'm like, no one can tell you that. Like, it's not hard. It's not easy giving up the dream because odds are if you're going over there, you're not coming back for the most part, not everyone, but the vast majority. So once you decide to go over there, and what you don't know until you get over there the first year is like, oh, I should have done more homework. Like, I started in the Italian league because I got an agent who was just, and he's a good guy, but he's one of those guys who just tries to sign as many guys as possible and to get his nut. And, that's his business model. And so I listened to him coming out of 3 AHL seasons or 2.5 AHL seasons. And with decent numbers for my type of player, there's no reason I should put in Allsvenskan, Austria, maybe DEL, there's no reason one of those 3 leagues I shouldn't have went to. And I started in Italy because I'm an idiot and I just didn't know what I didn't know, didn't ask around, was embarrassed to ask people for help, ask for advice, and started in the league where I shouldn't, looking back, and I had to grind my way up. So, you definitely got to do your homework before going over there, but you play less games, your travel is way easier, you get 2 national team breaks a year, your money is tax-free, they pay your agent, they pay for your apartment, they give you a car, there's a lot of perks to it, and you can have a great life. And by the end of my career, when I started my training company, I was getting paid, the team pays your taxes and then getting all that money and whatever it is in whatever league. And then you can come home and you can work for 5 months if you want to, or 4 months, or you start a company like I did and just work whenever you could do off ice training, or you can do lessons, and you can make 20, 30 grand in this easily, and then go in the season and play hockey, and you could do that for 10 years. Yeah. So you're right. Guys should look at that option, but it's hard to be I'm going to give it up. I'm going over.
No, I know. I think for myself, I was fortunate almost, I guess you could say, that my first year over was the year of the portion of the lockout back in 2012-13. That was the summer I was there in St. Louis. Buddy, I was fucking second Italian league to start. And I was just like, how did I go from an NHL contract to the second Italian league? I had so many moments where I would be sitting on the ice after practice, looking around thinking, where in the fuck did I go wrong? What in the hell happened? I'm in the second Italian league. I didn't even know there was a first Italian league, Yeah,
but how did you – but you battled to the Liga. How did you do that?
Man, that was for me, that was the start, the real start of my, mental journey. Because NHL contract to the second Italian league. I think I know which agent you're talking about. We won't name him, but I was there, and I was fortunate enough to win a championship there, and then I came back to America to play in the coast, got called up, and then back to the first Italian league. And so I'm just like, fuck, can I not get to Austria? Just like you were saying, second German league, Allsvenskan. And then, just wound up having an incredible season that year and had a team from Finland come out and watch me play. And that night I had 4 points, and that was it, and then the mental stuff, right? That's the game changer here. The physical skills are incredible, but if you don't have the mental skills, your physical skills are almost irrelevant for a lot of people, not for everybody, right? The Connor McDavids of the world, his skills are so goddamn high. I don't think I don't know what he does, right? But anyhow, So for anybody out there that's wanting to find you, where can they find you in terms of social media?
My Twitter and Instagram is just my name, at Jeff LoVecchio, LoVecchio. I usually just tell people to go to Instagram because I found that like mostly people are looking at Instagram unless they're like coaches or older people. most of everyone, the older people, the older crowd is on Twitter, and then most everybody else is on Instagram. But all these kids now are telling me TikTok, and I'm like, look, I got Instagram 2 years ago when I retired. Like, that's been enough. Like, I don't need another one. Okay.
Absolutely. All righty, my man. Well, I think that can be it. And then again, just want to thank you so much, buddy, for taking the time out of your day. I know you're a busy man, and I look forward to maybe doing another one of these, who knows, in the future. But so grateful for you and grateful for everything you're doing. Thanks,
bro. You too, man. It's powerful stuff. It's very, very cool. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. Take care.
Happy to be here. My name is Vinny Stellato, aka everyone calls me Vinny Sauce. And so right now I'm an entrepreneur. My biggest company that I own is the Original Hockey Sauce Kit. It's the first ever hockey yard game. So just imagine beanbags or horseshoes, but a hockey version. And it's really transformed into more than just a yard game. It's trick shots and training. So that's what I do in the day, for my job. And I'm also a single dad. I have two boys. And I started my journey into consciousness, and it kind of really started when I lived out West Coast in Arizona. It was about 7 years ago. I got into yoga. I was really getting into, overstressed, working a corporate job, a startup. And I was just, really overstressed, chronic pain. And I kind of found my avenue through yoga, and then it blossomed into many different avenues that way. So I'm live here in Chicago now. I'm back where I'm from. And that's been, I definitely have kind of like cultivated this story of I've been on the warrior's journey, and I'm kind of coming back to bring the medicine back home. So, and teaching me a lot, I'm around my parents, my kids, my grandpas, and I'm really starting to, it's been great medicine.
Nice, Matty. Well, first and foremost, thanks so much for taking the time out of your day. Obviously, you're an entrepreneur. I know you got a lot of stuff going on. Gratefully and thankfully through this quarantine situation, I'm able to grab a hold of you here for the next hour or whatever it's going to be. But in saying that, so you said, 7 years ago, you kind of went down this path. You were living in Arizona, hopped into yoga, which led you down the path of consciousness, mindfulness, whatever you want to call it, spirituality, and then came back home. So here you are now 7 years later, interacting with your kids, interacting with your family members. Have they maybe said anything to you in terms of the transformation that obviously you've gone through in those last 7 years? And you're probably a completely different person than you were, 7 years ago when you first left. So what has that kind of been like in terms of reconnecting with your family?
Yeah, definitely. Without a doubt, when you first come back and you get on this path, you're just so excited to talk about it. And you're just like, so you start spreading it, you start talking to your parents, your family, friends, childhood friends, all that. You're just so excited to talk about it. And I think that initial wave, then everyone's kind of like, whoa, a little skeptical. Like I was probably pushing it on them a little more, but just because I feel like I had awakened so much and I wanted to share.
Right.
I think that's been after talking to a lot of people, that kind of happens a lot. And then kind of from there, then it just kind of just led by example. I've always kind of been like a natural born leader, oldest brother. So I just kind of like, all right, I'm just going to put my nose to the ground and like, whether it was in being an entrepreneur, physically fit, or, spiritually fit, getting all in these things. I just like really just got so laser focused, like almost to the point of too far where I just shut everyone out for a while, years. And I was just like so laser focused. But then after that, then I kind of came out of that. And then I started to really see, once I started living it and people started seeing that glow or that difference I would act, I just started just getting down different avenues and just, quit drinking for 2 years, just a lot of different things where people were just like, whoa, what's going on? But he's looking happier than he's ever been. And he's, accomplishing these things in the, in the material world.
Yep.
So people started coming to me, they started coming to me, whether it was my dad or my mom has kind of always been my source of went on this. She's spiritual and she always I think she cultivated a lot of this in me, even though I didn't awaken up to it. So It's been cool to share with her, really cool to, share that with her. And then also, even with my dad as well. It was, we kind of were triggering each other for a while, but then we've now worked through that, and the relationship's better than ever. So, so it's been an awesome journey. And same with having kids. I think that in itself is been a spiritual awakening. Yeah, I mean, just like that's probably the biggest. I'd have to say the kids.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's obviously I'm a father myself, 2 kids, and it's very interesting to think about kids and how they just operate life through the lens of love. They do what they want, they say what they want, they love everybody, they love unconditionally. It's not until they get older in life and they kind of go through some adversity or some trauma, which kind of steers them off this kind of spiritual path that I think we're all naturally born with. And then it's life that kind of knocks us out of that path, right? So it's great. It sounds like you've got a beautiful relationship with your kids, and then like you said, with your mom, and now your dad. It's a fascinating thing. Have you had any friends or anything that maybe you were sharing with, and they're like, oh shit, maybe I want to hop on this train because this guy's fucking crushing life and he's happy and he's flowing? Has there been any interactions like that?
Definitely. And one of the closest people to me is like my brother to me is my cousin. We're the same, with a year of age. And it was something we really, grew together. He lives in California, but I would go visit him a lot. He would come home, and that was something my first person that we really shared it on.
Yeah.
Besides the friend that I met in Arizona, who kind of, I was working corporate. I would move to different cities all the time, and I would always just bring my hockey bag, join a beer league, and you make friends that way. Right. And this one kid, Alex, he really helped me lead on that path. So I appreciate Alex. Get me in hot yoga. Alex Dunning.
Okay.
And but then my cousin, and then and as it's evolved, more friends. But then it's great to connect with new people as well, and different types of relationships. Especially as being an athlete, we have lots of friends, lots of relationships, but not always the thing where you talk about this stuff in a locker room and stuff like that. So it's been cool to make new friendships and stuff like that.
Awesome. That's awesome, buddy. Well, one thing I wanted to get into is before we had hopped on here and started recording, you had mentioned that you went on this year-long mastermind thing with Aubrey Marcus. For anybody out there that doesn't know Aubrey Marcus, certainly check him out. On essentially, I would imagine all forms of social media. He's got his own podcast. Got another one that just came out called Inspire or something like that. But would you kind of touch on that? What was that experience like? And I would imagine you went to some retreats, and maybe you even got to met Aubrey. Maybe you could speak on kind of what he was like in person. I think that would be great for the listeners to hear about.
Definitely. Yeah. Aubrey, when I had found his podcast, through Joe Rogan, and I just really connected with it. I just thought it was the way how vulnerable he is, authentic he is. And I was just like, I just had never really seen that. From, someone I guess you look into. He was, physically fit, entrepreneur, all these things but he was, he was going about things a lot of different ways and really speaking from the heart. And I was just connected with it, really hard. And so then the opportunity came when he was doing this mastermind, and I was just like, it was a calling. It was just one of the things. I was like, okay, let's just go for it. Let's do it. And it was a year-long mastermind program where we did 4 different retreats. So every quarter we do a retreat. And they were all focused on different things, and we'd read books and we'd connect digitally within this group of 126 people that are in this mastermind. And it was a unique group. It was, there was professional athletes, there's doctors, there's practitioners, there was, a very unique group from all around the world too. So I went in there not knowing anybody, and, it was, it was life-changing. And, it started off at the first retreat in Austin on it. And we really got to that was awesome because we got to see what Aubrey built too. He's got a gym, he's got companies, he's got all this stuff. We got to see that, and that was really that was something I always really looked up to. And then as it got even better as it went on. From Tulum, Mexico, to LA, to Sedona, which all just magical places. And he would bring in these facilitators and different people for each one that were just like the best I've ever experienced.
Yeah, and I think that's the last one that I saw. That's how I even knew about this is, after having our interactions on Instagram, obviously I started following you, and then I think I saw bits and pieces of your experience there in Sedona. So what kind of stuff would you guys be doing? I would obviously imagine some yoga, some meditation, maybe some type of breathing work. So yeah, what kind of took place at these retreats?
Yeah, exactly. All those things. He's got a good team of people that he brings in. So it would be, journaling. It'd be, like I said, meditation. You'd have options to choose what you'd want to do. So you'd want to go do a cold immersion, breath work with Kyle Kingsbury, who's an MMA fighter and just absolute beast.
Yeah.
Or you could go do a workshop with, you said yoga, or it could be essential oils, or it could be, one of my favorite ones was in Tulum, Mexico. We did a Temazcal, a sweat lodge with a shaman.
Wow.
So no plant medicines or anything like that. It was just like sweat lodge, like hot, cold in this thing. It's like sauna to the max for, an hour long. And then we went and did like a mud bath ceremony afterwards on the beach.
Oh, wow.
So that was Tulum. That was epic. Sedona, he brought in one of this really unique musician called Parungai. And he plays all this like really dope music, horn. So he put on a show for us there. He would also bring in doctors, like Carnivore Wellness, talk about, whether it was stem cells to whatever people would open up their questions to. And then even one of my other favorite ones that really sticks out was this guy InQ. He's a poet, and again, like I never really even wrote poetry until that day. But this guy came out there and just like, it was like rap. It was like the dopest poetry I ever seen in my life. Like it was like chill. Like this guy just was epic. It was electric. And like so many things unfolded that just like made this, it was just insane. So like even after that day, I'm like started writing poetry just cause like, I was like, that was so dope. And like, so things like that, you just get inspired by these people and inspired by people within the group, because everyone was just so vulnerable and so raw and just like sharing what they're, and everyone was on the path. So we all were just like lifting up all each other. So it was like something I'd never experienced, to be honest.
Okay, awesome. And was it all men?
So it was majority men in the beginning. I felt like when at first, I'd probably say 80% men, 20% women. Then it started to shift, like, because people could add on as they come along. It started to shift, more and more girls started going to it. And like year 2, I'm not in it this year, but I'm just going to go to some retreats. And it looks like now it's probably more like 60-40-ish. Okay,
gotcha. Okay, and what would you say, like, in this modern age where, I feel like women for the most part are kind of really leading the trend in terms of self-healing, self-love, all these different forms of self-care, right? And it's kind of, frowned upon for a man to do it, for a man to be so vulnerable, for a man to cry, for a man to meditate, for a man to, I guess, try and let people know that, frick, I'm human. Yes, I've got muscles, or I've got this big truck, or I do this and I do that, but in the end, I'm still a human and I deal with things. So how was it for you going to these things and hearing other men share their vulnerabilities with you? And maybe that inspired you to just open up even more. Can you talk on that?
Yeah, 100%. Like I come from, like more of the old school, like just sports driven kind of like, don't show your emotions, just push through it, and it served me well in a lot of areas. But then I felt like, yes, I think, it was something I was not used to. Let's put it that way. Like I was definitely not used to. And but then I was inspired by other people being so vulnerable, sharing. Again, Aubrey was such someone that, showed me that path a lot. He was, extremely vulnerable in so many different areas. So I was inspired for that. So it was something I was like, it wasn't comfortable in the first, but then as you go on, and like, I remember the first time we sat all down, we had like a men's circle, and this one guy kind of led the men's circle. And that in itself was just something totally different than what I was used to. Like you said, sharing your vulnerabilities. And it was coming from a time when I was going through a really tough time as well. Relationship issues with my kid's mom. And I wasn't telling anyone either, because it was just a lot of stuff going on. I just didn't really I just had a lot of things going good for me. And it was like the one thing that wasn't. So I didn't want to really like talk about it that much. So I just kind of kept it in, and that was that was very helpful in seeing that. And these guys, and a lot of these people like were very experienced in this. Like, you know, like a lot of the guys that were there were experienced. Some weren't, but there was a good chunk of them that were experienced in like doing this. So it was just like, whoa, like it was shocking to see, but in all the good ways.
Okay, very nice. Real quick before I hop into like the next question I wanted to ask, what would you say is your like number one, your go-to in terms of taking care of yourself?
Go-to. I mean, I definitely have to be physically active, like, you know, on the daily. I just think I have a lot of energy, I have a lot of built up. You know, I've always been someone who's been active, doing tons of sports, playing all the time. So that is something, but I'm the type of person that kind of takes it overboard. So that's, you know, it's like now it's just balancing it out with, you know, the rest and recovery as well, and the downtime, the meditation, stuff like that. But I do think when I am stagnant and I'm not moving, I just don't feel myself. I'm not flowing. So I definitely would say some type of physical activity.
Okay, very nice, very nice. Okay, so that'll lead me into my next question. You know, through this whole coronavirus situation, I know for myself, I'm speaking from experience here, I've had a lot of things come up, triggers come up that I didn't know were going to come up, of course. And then secondly, my ego told me they weren't there. My ego told me I fully healed. You know, I experienced sexual abuse as a child and depression and PTSD in my teenage years. And I thought I dealt with all that. You know, I went through 2-3 years of therapy, of speaking with someone. And I thought, you know, I can look back on the sexual abuse and not be triggered, not have these emotions come up, you know. But through this situation, things have been coming up. I think there's been a major energy shift in the world. And one of the books that I just recently started reading was by Dr. Joe Dispenza, The Becoming Supernatural. Actually, I think you are actually the one that turned on him. Like, I don't know, 3, 4, or 5 months ago, you posted his podcast with Aubrey Marcus, actually. And then I listened to it, and man, like there's three things. There's 3 things. I believe that podcast, I believe the Heal documentary on Netflix, and then I believe the Untethered Soul. At that time, were 3 books that are 3 different forms: one reading, one listening, and one what's the other one? Or I guess one watching. There you go. Are all 3 things that all humans should be intaking. You know, and again, that podcast like changed my, like, I guess you would say, perspective on what's really real in this world, the energy, you know? And so again, for myself, I'm reading this book and I'm also experiencing this energy shift within myself. And it's just been like blowing my mind. I feel like in the last 4, 5, 6 days, I have gone through so much transformation, so much growth in such a short amount of time. And I believe this to be something that you're also obviously on the path with in terms of energy. So my question to you is, have you had anything maybe come up that you didn't think was there any longer through this quarantine stage that the whole world is in?
Yeah, definitely. Without a doubt. You know, it's I definitely had to, you know, I'm definitely someone who's like on the go all the time. Travel, I'm always like big. So this was like, you had to stay. So it definitely triggered, you know, in that moment that like, I definitely felt like, man, I may be running from more things than I think, you know, as much as I think I'm standing up and, which I think I do have the case of, running a little bit, you know, so that kind of brought up in some areas of that. And then also that right now, since I'm single and I'm I'm just like really, as much as I'm like, I've kind of been like pushing away the feminine energy for a while. Like, I'm kind of like, man, I don't want to even mess with that. I got enough going on. You know, like I'm kind of like, and just really seeing that, like, wow, that is something you're lacking, but you want that feminine, you want that polarity energy. I want to have that. And I kind of like been shutting it off just because I've been going through a separation, all these things. And I didn't want to like put myself in any bad positions. So that is definitely something I think that sparked the most of that. That's what,
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's kind of what's been coming up for me, is the understanding that in order for us to heal from our past and our traumas, we have to, as men, that is, we have to be willing to tap into that feminine energy. And I think we all naturally have it. It's just been suppressed for so many years. And the only thing that sticks out now is that masculine energy, which gives the men the strength to, again, puff their chest out. Again, you know, we'll just drink and we'll work out instead of talking about our feelings and our thoughts and emotions. You know, we'll just suppress it with working out or drinking with the boys or lighting up a joint, whatever the case is, you know, kind of to be cool, you know. But you know, down the path that we're both on, I think it's pretty fucking cool to share what we're really going through, you know?
Definitely. And I think that's something I've kind of like come on that path is that so I was dealing with chronic pain. I was dealing with, this relationship that was really, bringing a lot of damper and a lot of toxicity to my life. And I had to go there. I had to be my own feminine energy. So that's what really, got me into taking nature walks every day and doing all these things, because I had to, not only was I hurting inside, but I was having physical chronic pain. And really what that pain was just manifesting tension in my emotions. It was my emotions that were creating this pain. It wasn't anything physical, even though I was, at first imagining that. And you could even, and so then once I started like really tapping into that, that feminine energy, it was different, but it was like something I needed, and I needed to go there for a while. It was like I said, speaking of books, Untethered Soul, I discovered because of you. Thank you. I mean, that book changed my, there's like 5 books that have just changed my life in the last 2 years. And it's, again, learning to tap into that feminine energy, it was, and I almost, then I could, and where I was going with this is that I almost think I went the pendulum swang too far that way almost. Okay. So for so much of my life, it was pure, it was so much masculine, it was just how I was raised, it's how my dad is, how everyone, was just how sports and, women and whatever you could do, all that stuff it was that pendulum there. Then it swang really far the other way to where, it went to the point where like I also was overworking myself. So my adrenals had been taxed. I had gotten hormone tested. Everything was just like shot. I had working myself. And then also having a bad relationship with my kid's mom. It was just like, it was so much. Yeah. So then now over the last year, I've really felt that balance come into place. So that masculine, came back and everything, all this thing started. So now it's like balancing and tapping into both has been like, an awesome experience the last year. And I've, never felt happier because I'm able to actually feel those things and let myself feel them. And also at the same time, if, you get overwhelmed by them, just know that it's just a thought and you could pass over. So that's been like my journey of like, extreme masculine, going too far almost to where it was, I have a pendulum, but that's kind of how I've learned how it works. The pendulum needs to swing. And now that pendulum's like meet me back in the middle, and it's just beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. I remember back about 2.5, 3 years ago when I first started down the spiritual path. It started after my ex had decided she didn't want to be with me any longer. And The Untethered Soul was the first book that I picked up after our separation. So it was about 10 days after. And I remember I was in Finland at the time. I remember getting home that next summer and going to one side of the pendulum like you speak about. But the side I went to first was the high energy. I was just, I was flowing, man. The highest energy, where it's like, I didn't ever have to take naps. I was just like in the gym, crushing it 2-3 hours in the gym. And then I'd go on my nature walks and I'd be calling buddies, man, I love my life. This is unbelievable. And then now, like you say, in terms of the feminine energy, which I also enjoy experiencing, it swings you right back. And it's like both to me are signs of extreme growth. That, you you just started on this spiritual path. I'm going to give you a bit of the juice. Here's some of the juice to let you know what this is all about, right? And then I'm going to swing it back to the other side, the feminine side, and let you know this too is also what it's about. You're going to cry. You're going to feel. And then when that kind of wears off after a month, 5 months, 6 months, everybody's going to be different. Then I'll bring you back to center and you can still enjoy everything. But we're chilling a little bit now.
Yes. Yes. And the pendulum might swing again. But it's,
Well, exactly. And I think kind of that's where I'm at now. I feel like my pendulum is swinging back towards the feminine now. I think about, we're both divorced. I don't know if were you married?
No.
Okay. So anyhow, we're both separated from our children's mothers.
Yes.
Right? Both have 2 kids.
Yep.
And I'm finding out that there's a lot of things that I need to heal from in terms of my prior relationship. So I had my sexual abuse that I dealt with. And through that, it created some intimacy issues for myself, some sexual issues.
Yep.
And in my last relationship, it was kind of a joke. It was laughed about, which just created more layers on top of the root issue here, right? So something I wanted to make sure I spoke about on this episode with you in particular was kind of some of the insights I've been having in terms of the subconscious mind, in terms of the abuse that I went through, the joke that it was in terms of my marriage, and then where I'm at now in my current relationship with my girlfriend. And she is just amazing, and she's in the same headspace as we are, and she's understanding of the subconscious mind, the conscious mind, and how powerful the ego is. And so, I think maybe not unfortunately, but I think through all the content that I put out there on Instagram, people think that maybe I don't drink and that I don't use marijuana every now and then. I'm done with chewing tobacco. I'm done using alcohol and marijuana as a form of suppression, as a form of coping. I no longer need those things to fill any voids within me, but I still do enjoy those things every now and then. So it was just a few days ago, I had actually smoked a little bit. And when you smoke, for me at least, it brings me into the present moment. There's that term, I'm freaking out. Well, when you smoke, you freak in. When you drink, you freak out. You become more external. You start doing things physically. But when you smoke, I get freaked in, and I gain such an insane level of awareness. And again, this is something I wanted to talk to you about. I was having this thought. It was like a single thought was just coming in my mind. I could kind of feel it building in the back of my head. It started coming up to the front of my forehead, and then it literally just dropped down into my mouth. So the thought was formulating, and the next thing you know, instead of having another thought, I was just speaking it. So there was no filter. You know what I mean? And to just be so aware of that moment, I was just blown away. Have you ever had anything like that where you're just so
definitely. No, I'm a big fan. Like I said, of smoke, marijuana, huge fan. Always have been. I mean, there's been periods in my life where I stopped and didn't smoke. And I think there's always good times to take breaks, and that's what I recently did with alcohol. I quit drinking for alcohol, and then I came back and I had such a healthier relationship. But yes, for marijuana creative wise, I love it creative. Like even doing inner work, like you said, working in. It's been such a great tool for me in so many different ways. I mean, even looking back at a young age, I had a lot of anger issues. I just I had anger. I was angry. I'd fight a lot. I would just get in trouble. I'd get kicked out of school. All these different things. But so I kind of used it in a crutch when I was younger to calm me down and all these things. But in a way, I think it still helps. A lot of things. I think it still helped me. And then now it's amazing. Obviously, it's legal now. All that paranoia is gone. You can find your strains that that you can tool to what you're trying to accomplish, whether that's rest or a sativa that's going to get you dialed in, or So I think it's an amazing tool. I anyone that knows me, I just work all day long and I love working. And that whole stigma of it'll make you lazy. It's the opposite for me. I think when I smoke, I'm ready to take on whatever task that is. Use it to my advantage, what it is. So I'm a big fan. So I have a lot of those experiences like that. And, I think it's just great that seeing how the legal and everything, it's awesome.
Well, absolutely. And again, for anybody out there that has never experienced with marijuana, I think there is that stigma around it, that it's a drug. I don't view it as a drug, but it's bad for you. But you see all the medicinal, everybody knows alcohol is a million times worse for you than marijuana is. Marijuana has so many different medicinal, characteristics to it. But yeah, there is 2 different strains, or I guess you would say 3 different strains. There's the sativa, which is a high. It's going to lift you up, make you a little giggly, maybe euphoric, make you want to do something. It's going to give you a little bit of an energy boost. And then there's the indica, which is going to calm you down. It's going to make you like a couch potato, numb your body probably if you've got any pain as well. And then which is the hybrid, where it's a little bit of both, right? But I'm kind of the same way. If I'm doing it, I'm sticking with the sativa. I'm high energy already. I don't want anything that's going to bring me down. I love doing adventures. I love going out into nature. And if you do while, having a little bit of marijuana in you, man, you'll see those trees a little bit differently. You'll see that water a little bit differently. It's incredible experience.
You connect. Yeah. Connecting with nature is one of the best things, it's truly just feels like it puts you on that frequency, just like us humans and, plants have, they're conscious as well. So I feel like you do get onto that, higher frequency And yeah, it's amazing. And I think also I want to touch on is that the one thing I'm always big on too is that it's just like how I eat very clean, healthy, organic, and everything clean. I think you really have to be careful in that you're doing that same thing with where you're getting your product from. You know, so let's tested, organic. You know, I'm a person that like I only like sun-grown, organic, soil-grown, you know, product. Living on the West Coast, you kind of get spoiled, and having people and friends that are in the business, and you know, being in the business myself prior. I'm just very. I think same thing as food. You know, it's like what you give your food is what you eat. You know, what your food eats is, you know, that's what it is. And same with this. So that's why it's great to be in the, you know, buying from the stores that are tested. And if you can get the greenhouse or sun grown, I'm a big fan of that too. I just think it offers a lot more, you know, array of cannabinoids, but also just a better. I'm almost at the point now I can feel almost the spirits in the product. You know, like it might look all good and all these things like that, and same with food, but like you consume it, you take it, and you just the energy that plant had. I think it goes a long way, and so organic all the way.
All the way, baby. That's right. And it's interesting you said to use it as a way to kind of, you know, tap into yourself, bring you into the present moment. And I'm finding with myself, once I started reading that book, Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza, I'm starting to learn about all of this energy, the quantum physics, the subconscious mind, the conscious mind. And the other day, I just wanted to, you know, smoke and then literally sit down or lay down in a meditative state and just kind of be so present with the difference that my body was going to start feeling, my mind was going to start feeling. And so I had an experience happen where I was triggered. I was triggered by something. I don't remember exactly, but it's like I could feel the energy passing through the different chakras, the different energy centers in our bodies. And it's like I could feel the subconscious. I could feel the conscious coming together. And then it got stuck. The conscious mind stayed stuck. The subconscious came through. And it came through like a fucking tornado. And there was nothing I could do in that moment. And that was the moment I realized, holy shit, like that stuff that I need to heal from, and it's all in terms of my sexual abuse, that stuff is deeply rooted and it's very powerful. And in that moment, I wasn't able to detach and look at it from a different perspective and realize where it was coming from, you know? So that was another thing.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah. And again, oh man, that was it. There was one other one I wanted to talk to you about. And so,
yes.
Yeah. So I was in that same day, the same experience. I just smoked, laid down. I had Bob Marley playing on my speaker, my Bluetooth speaker. And I was sitting there singing, subconsciously singing word for word. And then in my mind thinking about the fact that I don't need to sit here and think about singing. I can think about whatever I want up here, but my mouth is still going to move. You know, so so what I'm saying is we can go and drive 100 miles and be not present and then not remember that we just drove for 5 hours because we're so lost in the mind. We can't really multitask, so to speak. So I was kind of multitasking. I was thinking about the fact that I don't need to think about singing, yet I'm singing it word for word. You know what I mean?
Yes. Wow. That's wild. That's wild.
Man,
that's fun though. I mean, that's the cool. Like you said, it brings you into your body. You know, like I think so much of the day, and same with me. And again, this is like a masculine trait of, you know, we're living in our heads. Like what we're gonna do, knock things out. That's one of the, again, that I think when you're able to, you know, use marijuana, you smoke, and you get more into your body, you know, and you can get out of your mind, just be more, like you said, in the present moment. But I do like how you said, like the body, like, so even like before doing yoga or taking a walk or doing something like that, I think it helps you get out of just the rat race to your head, just like all that, and just let it settle in, you know? So it's like, it can be used so mindfully. And so this is a great tool. And yeah, of course someone could just use it and not do anything, but I feel like they're going to be lazy and not do anything anyways, you know, like, so it's like, you're not going to blame it on that, you know, that those days are over, that stigmas and stuff. So yeah.
For sure. And I don't know if you, I'm assuming you have Netflix. Have you seen the Goop Lab on there with Gwyneth Paltrow?
No.
Okay. You're going to want to check this out for sure. So Gwyneth Paltrow started her own business in Santa Monica, California called the Goop Lab or something along those lines. And what it is it's a group of people that want to get the most out of life, but they want to try all these new modern trends and come up with their own, you know, decision on how they view it. So the second episode is them going with Wim Hof up to Lake Tahoe,
Nice.
California, and going through a weekend with Wim Hof, doing all the cold water immersion.
Yep.
You know, the breathing technique he has. They have one guy that comes in and works energetically and is able to get the Julianne Hough, if you know who that is, the dancer.
Yeah.
Has her on.
Yes.
She has her own like studio or something like that in California, and brings this guy in, and then brings different like 4 or 5 people that work with Gwyneth Paltrow so they can experience it. And this guy was working with the energy field that surrounds our body, what Joe Dispenza calls the 8th chakra. The 8th chakra center.
Yes.
It's not in the body. It's, you know, a foot outside, and it's hovering all around.
Yes.
And so this guy had these people's bodies moving all over the place. He had energy moving throughout their body. And what he was also doing was helping these people to heal. But one of the episodes talked about shrooms. I don't know if you've ever experienced shrooms. I myself have not. The only drug I've ever done has been marijuana. But the group took just a micro dose of shrooms in Jamaica. 5 or 6 of them flew out to Jamaica, met with this couple that had their own little business. They did 3 grams of a microdose of shrooms, and they filtered it, they steeped it in tea and then drank it. And then just went through extreme transformation, extreme healing. And through that, I was like, holy hell, I know there's stuff still within me. I know my ego is just telling me I'm free when I know I'm not. So I'd potentially be interested in trying something like that. Have you ever experienced with that?
Yes. Yeah, I definitely have. And I definitely think that's the future of, therapy and stuff like that. He's got, one of the favorite organizations, MAPS. They're the ones that's pushing this all through the FDA. And it's getting fast tracked. And there was people within that Aubrey Marcus mastermind that are like on the forefront of this. They're counselors. They're people that are in this. They're people that are doing this, in a sense. And so it was, I think that's the future. I think every town, every couple in every, city or, town, I should say, lots in the city, within the next 5 years, they're going to be everywhere. And it's going to be a guided assisted therapies where you sit down with, and do a mushroom trip with with the 2 therapists that are trained in this, and you will work through so much that would probably take, 20 years worth of work, because you can get to it and you're in a state. So they're testing it. It's, I know people that have done it, and they're testing on the worst people. Like, they're not the worst. The people that have they're having no reaction to any medications, the worst PTSD, and they're showing that, after doing this one session, like, they don't need it anymore. They don't need to take pills the rest of this one session. They're already it kicks that, reconnects these new things in their neurons in their brains, that they're able to see things from a different perspective and heal, not be fully healed, but be more on that path and see things differently. Well, so I think it's going to be huge.
Absolutely. And I think what people will come to find, for anybody out there that is, attaches themselves so much to this external world, and the pharmaceutical companies out there in America and around the world, and kind of, the chemicals that are being put in these products, the chemicals that are put in, the drugs that people are taking, that, for people that do have PTSD, for people that, suffer from bipolar, from depression, from anxiety, from any of these illnesses, low mental health. I think if people were to give this stuff an honest, try marijuana or shrooms, and is there one other thing too, like MDMR or something like that?
MDMA,
yeah, that's and again, I think once you try something like this and you realize, how instrumental this, relatively, it's a plant, right? Mushroom. What would you consider a shroom? A vegetable then that we can
fungi. Yeah, fungi.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Find these things that are natural, that aren't going to cause harm to your body. They're not going to have a frickin' 1,000 page list of side effects that you could potentially die from within the first 10 minutes of taking a pill.
Oh no.
These things are, again, going to help you. But I think if people would give these things more of a, an honest effort, or even a try, an attempt, they would come to find that they don't need those pills, because the pills are just a Band-Aid. The pills aren't going to truly help you in the long term. They're going to help you in the short term, but I don't think they're going to heal for 1 week or 1 year. They want to be healed throughout the rest of their life, right? And that's, these things that try instead,
Yeah, it was cool. Like I said, that within that group of that mastermind, I really got to see where it's going. I almost think it's happening. Like, now I'm like, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. Like that MAPS, the way they're fast tracking this through the FDA is like never seen before. So like because the studies are just so, they're just, you can't deny them.
Yeah.
You know, like drug studies, they're so skewed. I mean, the placebo works better than, 99% of the actual drugs that get put to market. Placebo, just the power of thought, like Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Yeah.
So, but these these plant medicines and these different, or MDMA's not plant medicine, but it's a heart opener. You're able to, that for a case, you're able to take that with guided therapy. You're able to like truly get to your heart and be able to express your heart to a point that where once you do that, your body knows how to do it again. It's not maybe going to reach that point all the time, but it can like just clear out blockages. Yeah. And one thing that I wanted to touch on when you were talking about energy work, and I actually had a really wild experience with some energy work. Okay. And it was something I'd love to share. So it was I had went to a chakra meditation with a buddy, and it was at a yoga studio, and this guy was just like, I was just like, he was one of those guys, you walked in, he was like, holy shit, like this guy has it. You felt his energy, you could just feel it. And it was like, just an amazing meditation. Just, I was buzzing, absolutely buzzing. The light, I just felt it more than ever. And he brought me up on, he was like, brought me up on stage, like, whose birthday is the closest? I was like, my birthday is yesterday. So he brings me on and does like a chakra reading and all this stuff. And it was really insightful. It was kind of talking about, he could feel that the chakras that were around my, my adrenals, my energy centers, and even, my sacral, my solar plex were kind of shut down, and he called it right away. So then I actually reached, afterwards I talked to him. I was like, I'd really like to do a one-on-one. So the next day I came back, I met him at, he was staying at some lady's house, and like, I didn't know where I was going, pull up this mansion. And I go downstairs not knowing what to expect. And, we talk a little bit. I tell him on the path I'm on, it's with that. He's like, okay, like, I think you're ready for this. And so we sat there across from each other on a couch. Well, he had like a crystal that was like the size of my head. And I just had my eyes closed and my legs, sitting, Indian style, and just breathing, just, for like an hour or two. It felt like, I don't know, it went by quick. And every time I look up a little bit, he'd be like swirling this crystal, like mostly pointed at my third eye. Yeah. And I just was deep meditation 2 hours. When I left there, we kind of like had a quick closeout. When I left there, I felt like I was seeing energies. Like I went and parked at over at the park, and I could just see water. I could see things moving. It was just wild. Wow. And then out of nowhere, my dad calls, and he's like, "Hey, what's up? I was like, where you at?" I'm like, "I'm up in St. Charles. It's an hour where we're from." He's like, "Holy shit, I'm over here too. I was thinking about using that gift card you gave me at this it's like a salt cave and float tank place. I gave him a thing for a gift card." Yeah. He's like, "I think I'm gonna go over there right now." I'm like, "Oh, I'm right over there. I'll meet you over there." And so I went over there, and this was during that period of like, me and my dad were kind of butting heads a lot. And it was but I had this like sense of, I don't know, I just wanted to tell him like I loved him. So like I was like, "I'll meet you, I'll come over there." And like, so we're talking, I'm like, "Hey Dad," and I was like, I don't know how I even said it, but I was just like, I just said, like, I was like, "Dad, I just wanted to I love you." And in that moment, I seen his face transform into like the young boy, like a young boy, because he didn't have a dad. He had a rough childhood. His mom, all these, mom's kind of, abusive, you'd say, like he just had a rough childhood. I seen his face transform into that little boy that just wanted to be told he was loved. And like from that, then we hugged, and from that day on, that was like a really big turning point for us. Like it was wild. That's incredible, man. Had you not gotten your dad that gift card, that experience may have never happened. Exactly. Yeah. Seriously. Crazy. Yeah, it's crazy how literally everything's connected, right? And real quick to touch on kind of what you said there in terms of like parenting. And I think a lot of times the things that we don't get from our parents, and this is kind of off topic here, but you mentioned it, I just kind of wanted to touch on it. The things that we don't get from our parents, whether it be love or, security, confidence, any of these things, a lot of the times it's because our parents didn't receive that from their parents. So if you want to try and cultivate that relationship with them where you can start receiving that from them, I suggest you start giving it to your parents, right? Yes. You said your dad didn't feel loved. You didn't grow up with a father. Well, all you did was simply just tell your dad you love him, which I'm sure you had done many times in the past, but this time was a little bit different,
right? He could probably spend
Yeah.
some energy whether he was aware of it or not. But here you go. You
Yep.
gave your dad a little bit of love, and that kind of broke him down a little bit. Now you guys are like best friends or something close to that,
Yes.
right? Or certainly
Yes.
in a better place now than you were then, right?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Like you said, like, I think that's part of the thing that, for me, it was having kids. I don't think you have to have kids to have this, but you really start tracing the patterns back from your grandpas, and you start seeing why, like you said, who didn't receive this and why they're like this. And you start tracing it all back because I'm thinking about how I don't want to mess my kids up. I love them so much. I want to figure out, I want to heal these things out of me. I want to help my parents and I just want to at least understand how this is all going to, how this, and I see it all, I could see it. I mean, you still discover new things every day, but yeah, it's been a trip. Just that ancestral, it's just so much is passed down, but then we can break them, like there's so many, and that's why, again, I think in the beginning when you're first comparing to, like, you start discovering this and you start getting almost angry, like, oh, why didn't I have this? And, kind of like some resentment towards your parents a little bit. And then after working through that, then you realize that, they broke a lot of cycles too, and gave you a better life. And then you can try to break as many cycles as you can, but you're not going to break them all. But that's just the evolution of how we're going to be able to do it. And that's, you try your best and then you can, So it's been cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's great. Trying to think about maybe where else we could take this. I think I kind of hammered on all the things I wanted to in terms of like sharing with you some of the insights, asking the question. Okay, that's what I wanted. How has this been? Because it's my belief that, spirituality in the modern world is about still participating in this external world. You participate in it, right? You have your own business. I'm an athlete. I have my own kind of business with the mental health stuff, but I'm no longer a victim to this external world. So that, in my opinion, is kind of what spirituality is in today's society, is, still participating in it, but not being a victim to the needless suffering that takes place, that so many people suffer through because they have outsourced essentially their whole entire life. So here we are now in this current coronavirus situation where our external world has essentially been shut down. So many people are just left with themselves. And I think through that it's actually causing even more suffering for people. So how has it been for you, being on the spiritual path, but also having your own business, being an entrepreneur? Have those two worlds kind of collided at any point for you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was, I was so out of whack for a while, like just so business driven, even from a young age, like from, 12, 13, I was just always working, always like figuring out ways to make money. I just kind of like always was wanting to be an earner, in a sense, like I always just finding out ideas, whether it's making t-shirts, selling tickets, anything. I was just always trying to find ways. So I was very lopsided in that. This spiritual path definitely balanced it out a lot more. And it's like you said, I also kind of, in some ways I accomplished a lot of what I want to do in the external world, but then I just like kind of still felt that like it's never going to be enough. Like I had these goals that I wanted to reach to, and I'm glad I pushed myself to do it. I got to see how far I could push myself. Like I said, push myself to the point of adrenal failure and just purely exhausted, but I wouldn't change it for the world, because I was like, I was able to accomplish a lot in this short time, and I was like, okay, I can see how far I can push it. I don't need to go that hard all the time. And now, like I said, it doesn't like, it's not life or death if I don't succeed in these scenarios anymore. Obviously now I can support my family, so it kind of was life and death for a while. I needed to support my family in this, and that's what I needed to. But yeah, the spiritual path has been a great balance. It's something that it's just, now it's even this last year, that Fit for Service, that mastermind was just, I feel like I'm thankful for all the work. And a lot of people that we're talking about, just like, we're thankful for all that work we did for this last year, because of times like this, I'm able to, it's like, I don't want to say it's like not that hard for me, but it's a lot easier for me to like handle things like this or anything that comes at me, with having a spiritual practice and having practices to ground myself. I'm very, like I said, a runner. I'm always on the go. I want to move next. What's next? Next steps. I want to fucking attack things. So grounding me in spiritual practice is just, it's been just medicine,
For sure. And one last question before we get going here. What would you say, if you could offer any type of advice for maybe any other business owners out there, any other entrepreneurs out there that's maybe come through some conflict in their business? Maybe things don't happen the way they expected, the way they wanted to. Maybe a deal falls through and they don't get that amount of money at the end of the month that they expected. What kind of type of advice in terms of spirituality would you maybe have for these owners that are, have this situation happen? They become so resistant to it, and it only winds up being a domino effect of negativity for their individual selves, but also for the business. I would imagine maybe you've had some similar experiences where you've been able to maybe detach from the end results, and that has helped you to continue to grow your business.
Definitely. It's, being a business owner, entrepreneur, there's so many ups and downs. Like it's constant, a daily thing. It's, it's nonstop. And I've had some things that were just absolutely devastating, where it just like put me out for 6 months and stuff. So I've kind of like been through that all. But one thing with me, I'm always like momentum, I'm a big momentum guy, and that momentum is go either which way. So, again, having these practices, having these tools, I can kind of say a lot of different tools, or spiritual practices, grounding practices, physical practice, whatever you can to blunt that negativity and stop that and get the momentum flowing the other way. So, and there's also been lots of times where things didn't work out where I wanted to. And then because of that, more opportunities came from it. So it's like, all right, that happened. I can't do what you can to control that things don't happen to you, and try to work that stuff. But the things that you can't control, all right, it's done. All right, let's move next. Let's double down on the next thing. Let's just push forward. Let's make that next phone call. Let's do that next. Let's get the momentum rolling. Because I was always, I was a big sales guy in corporate world. So I was, it's a numbers game. And that was one thing with me. I would get hot, man. I would get so hot and I would absolutely crush it. And then I would have these months where I was just cold, like you kind of wear all your leads out, you're exhausted. And I would get so down. And then I would be like, then it was just the quicker. Now it's like what I've learned through the spiritual practice is I'm able to bounce back from everything fast. Everything, whatever it is, personal life or anything, like everything, I'm able to bounce back faster than letting it dwell and stuff like that. Because again, detaching it, detaching from it, recognizing what maybe you weren't seeing things all clearly. Okay, now how can I learn from it? I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. I'm going to keep learning from it. So that's why sometimes I do see people, and I kind of seen this, some people in the, that fit for service, Aubrey Marcus thing, that some people would just go too far on the spiritual side. Like, oh, it's just like, it wasn't meant for me. It wasn't my path. Like, okay, like something else will just come to me, and they didn't like put in the fucking work. And that's where I'm more like, okay, let's like Gary Vee style. Like I'm going to hustle, grind. Like how can you combine that? And that's something I'm still working on, but like, I'm definitely from that like hustle grind, but then how can I also, like bring in that spirituality, balance it out, and like, but it's still a chance. I'm still working on that, finding the avenues and knowing which times in that, which way to go for that.
Yeah, fuck, man, I totally forgot that you've met Gary Vee. He's fucking been in there where you're at, right? Or maybe you went to his office and you guys hucked a little sauce to one another, right?
So that I wish I was there for that. I wasn't there for that, but it was actually right after that first, for Aubrey Marcus, the first thing we went to was in Austin, Texas, and we got to see his headquarters and all that stuff. So of course, me, I'm rolling up with the sauce kits and the twigs first day. How you doing? And so I got, I vibed with them, and it actually I think it was funny when I first set up the sauce kit, and I hadn't really met Aubrey yet face to face, but then his assistant was like, "Yo, you got the sauce kit here, bro? That's dope." And Aubrey's like, "What?" Wait, Aubrey's like, "What?" And I knew, Aubrey had worked with, he works with Jonathan Tage and Duncan Keith and a bunch of NHLers. So I was already like, yeah, I want to get this guy playing, So then he's like, yeah. So I challenged him to a game, and it's like me and Aubrey start playing. We start connecting on that level. And then I was like, yeah, I'm leaving kits for you guys. And I made, and then I kept making friends with all the people that worked for him, his assistants, all these things like that. And there was a few hockey guys that were that. So I was like, oh yeah, we're golden. I'm like, yeah, I'm leaving you guys kits, leaving you sticks. Like, like let me know, shoot any pictures and stuff. You get anyone using it, Well, then next week, Gary Vee was coming for the podcast, and they end up like creating a whole like yard game thing out of it, because of that. And I didn't even know about it. And I just got the notification that Gary Vee just like put it all up on the YouTube. And I was just like, I was buzzing, man. It was awesome. It was awesome.
Unreal.
And it came at a time. And the timing that it came, this is a story. I can't release all the information. Soon I will be able to. But it came at a time when I was in a big negotiation, too. So I had some big negotiation things that were going on to take SauceKit to like my next level, what I'm trying to do. Yeah. And it was like kind of just back and forth kind of shit. You know, like I was wanting things and they weren't willing to cave on that. And that Gary Vee video got released and I sent it to him the next day. I'm like, hey, I'm telling you guys, this is the type of stuff we're going to be able to keep creating. You know, kind of like put it on there. Boom. They agreed. Done deal. Signed contract. And it was like the timing of it couldn't have been better. Like it was epic.
So shout out to Gary Vee. Thank you, Gary Vee, for the help on that.
Yes. Yeah, Gary and Aubrey, both of them, killer. Yeah, it was solid. I told Aubrey that he loved it. He loved this story.
Nice. All righty, my man. Well, I think that can be it. First and foremost, again, just wanted to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. And sharing the insights and the experiences that you've been so fortunate and I'm sure grateful to have been living through. And I'm sure there are going to be many more on the way. Would there be anything you'd like to say, any type of advice, life advice maybe for any of the listeners? And then after that, just share where maybe they can find you in terms of social media.
Definitely. Yeah, I think if I had to pick one thing, just be true to yourself, you know, be authentic. You know, obviously, you know, do whatever you can to help people, but living, I've never been happier more now just by living your true self. And don't feel bad for, you know, want to do whatever you want to do and just really live true to you, work hard and just put your nose to the ground. And if you really, you know, want to build something, you can, you know, like I started this, you know, SauceKit 7 years ago by myself, you know, many years it was by myself. And, you know, now it's, you know, it's grown into something even bigger than I imagined. You know, we're master retailer around the world, selling around the world, be able to provide my family and do something I love. You know, I get to meet people like you and connect with all different types of people. So it's, you know, anything's possible. In today's day and age, it's no better time to do it. You can make yourself look like a huge company. You can do things now that you can compete with the big boys. And so, yeah, just go after it. And so you can find me. So my company, Hockey SauceKit, at all social media is just at Hockey SauceKit. My socials are at Vinny Sauce, VINNY Sauce. And then I also have another company called the Conscious Healing Company. And that's where we sell supplements. We're starting to get into retreats and we do farm to table dinners.
That's great.
So that's that's about a year and a half only, but I'm super excited about that. It's kind of like my other passion besides sports and hockey. I've always been into supplements and always been into you know, this type of conscious living, but I really want to bring back, you know, getting together people and farm to table kind of family style dinners, as well as different retreats. And I'd love to help share that medicine in the hockey world as well.
Yeah.
So appreciate you too, buddy. I know it's been great. First time talking face to face. It's hopefully many more, buddy.
Absolutely. And obviously we both have kids, so maybe one day we can meet in Columbus or we meet in Chicago or something. I bring the kids down and we can all meet and go check out some frogs in the backyard or something like that.
Game, bro. Game. I'm actually planning to come to Ohio this summer, so I'll have to make it happen.
Cool.
Awesome,
Perfect.
brother.
All right, my man. Well, thank you again so much. And for all the listeners, again, don't hesitate in leaving a comment and subscribing, giving you more access to all the content of mine across the SportsEpreneur platform. That'll be it. Thank you all for listening. Have a grateful day.